Right. This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, Mayor of the District of North Vancouver, and so the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all here to our regular meeting of Council for Monday, April 13th at 7 o'clock. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated with the package. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda with the agenda? Hearing none, will someone move its adoption? Moved by Councillor Ma, second by Councillor Murray. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. We'd like to start our meeting off in a good way, and Councillor Back has offered to do a land acknowledgement. Oh, it is on the top of the first page of the agenda. There's.
We respectfully acknowledge the original peoples of these lands and waters, specifically the Tsleil-Waututh, the Squamish, and the Musqueam, on whose unceded ancestral lands the District of North Vancouver is located. We value the opportunity to learn, share, and serve our community on these unceded lands.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Okay. We set aside a period of up to 30 minutes at the front end of every regular meeting of council for an opportunity for members of the community to share issues of concern with them. And so we do have a speakers list of people who have signed up ahead of time. Looks like I've got 5 people who have signed up to speak. We can usually get through about 10. So after these, we've gone through these ones, we'll check and see if people in the room or virtual participants would like to add their name to the list. I think I neglected to pass the minutes here. So we do have 4 sets of meeting minutes that have been circulated with the package. Any errors or omissions from those meeting minutes as presented? Hearing none, moved by Councillor Back. Is there a seconder on the matter? Second by Councillor Murray. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. So we're now going to move into a period of public input. And the first speaker I have is Aidan Kyle, joining us here in person. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council. Speaker? Yes. We'll get the microphone there. Go for it.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Aidan Kyle, and I'm a longtime resident of the District of North Vancouver. I'm here to speak in support of SSMUH, as well as to present some concerns around the current consultant requirements and associated fees related to construction of coach homes within the district. In many ways, the district is the perfect place to live. It has unparalleled access to nature, strong services, and a real sense of community. I was raised here, I met my wife here, and we've recently welcomed our first child here. Our families, our support systems, our home is all here. That said, with the housing crisis as it is, traditional home ownership is out of reach for many young families such as mine. So we've been looking for other ways to stay. And one of the most obvious choices for us is building a coach home on family property. This is exactly the future the district talks about. It's gentle density, a better use of existing land, and keeping families close without changing neighborhood character. But in practice, it's not becoming feasible. While the zoning allows it on paper, the reality comes down to cost and complexity. In the District of North Vancouver, a small backyard home is still treated like a large development project. It requires multiple consultants, complex servicing and drainage requirements, and in some cases, responsibility for public infrastructure upgrades. These requirements can increase total project costs by around 25% through municipal fees, servicing costs, and the added site requirements they create. In addition to my words today, I'm going to submit a comparison of laneway home fee structures in neighboring municipalities. I hope Council takes the time to review. This all leads me to ask, do I still have a place in the community that raised me? Because right now the outcome is this. Families such as mine, families who were raised here, who want to live here and continue to participate, are being priced out of the very solutions that this policy is meant to support. And we're not asking for lower standards. Apologies, I've just lost my place here. We're asking for a more balanced approach that scales requirements to the size of the project. If the people who grew up here can't find a way to stay, who are these policies really serving? A community has to build for its future, and I would like to simply remind Council that we are that future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aidan Kyle. Next speaker I have is Robert Armstrong, joining us here in person. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Your Honor and Council. And I'm speaking to the same issues as Aidan, and he's done most of the work for me. He's a little younger than me, but the issue is the same. I've spoken to your honor and a number of council members about the issue of coach houses. We are longtime residents of North Vancouver, came in 1991, renovated an heritage home and lived there until 2019, at which time we were sold by the idea of a coach house. We would sell our home to our children who were raising 2 young children, and we would move into a coach house. We were naive, totally naive about the difficulty of doing that in this district. And as council well knows, there are issues with FSR building square footage allowable. And if you have a basement that is slightly above ground, above the 4-foot level, you have to count the basement as part of the FSR. That has forced all of the new homes around us to build underground so that they can build homes 4,000 to 5,000 square feet. Our 2,700 renovated home, 2,000 to 700 square foot renovated home did not qualify because we had to count the basement, whereas those other homes did not. The mayor was clear about the problems of building underground. It costs more cement. It affects the water table. And it's not a good place to live, to rent a suite center or live. So it's an issue that we started in 2019, and to this day we have not been able to build a coach house. I've worked with council, I've worked with the staff. You have the bylaws in place, and I'm really pleased with that. And I ask that you approve them, move forward on those bylaws. I also want to make the point that the coach house is not a developer initiative. It's a family-focused initiative. It's a generational respect for the community. It's a community building generational investment over the future. So we would love to build this coach house. This is 5 years later that we're still trying to do it. It still hasn't been passed. We are 5 years older. Our grandchildren are growing up, and there's a point where we obviously can't succeed. And I just want to reinforce Aidan's point that the additional cost, when we originally wanted to build, the price of a coach home has gone up 60 to 70%. Now this addition, 25% of district costs added to the home make it unfeasible. So I encourage you to move forward, think of coach houses as separate from the bigger SMUH issues, and please support us moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker I have is Clayton Wellwood, joining us here in person. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address council.
Thanks, Your Honor. Good evening, everybody. I live at Unit 25, 840 Premier Street, which is Edgewater Estates. And so that's the existing property that's adjacent to the proposed social housing development at Lillooet Road, which is item 8.5 on your agenda today. So that's what I'll be speaking to. I sit on the board of Edgewater Estates, and so I'm sharing my views as well as views of others on the board, and as well as those of my neighbors. And I'll say that for myself, and I believe many others, we're broadly supportive of the project. We think it's a good spot for social housing. It's a good spot, I think, that's kind of an underutilized area. However, with 118 units and only 188 units, I should say, and only 117 parking stalls allocated for residents of the building, that works out to a ratio of 0.62 parking stalls per unit. Now, fully half of the units in this proposed development are family housing, so 2 bedrooms or more. There are even a large number of 3-bedroom units, and there are even some 6, I believe, 4-bedroom units. So I understand that the developer has, perhaps with district staff, developed this ratio with other such social housing projects as a kind of a benchmark or a baseline, I just don't think it's realistic for this neighborhood. I mean, I hardly know any families in the North Shore with school-age kids that have only one car. Virtually all of them have two, as far as I could tell. I understand it's social housing. It's a little bit of a different demographic. I still think having less than one vehicle per family type housing unit with 2 bedrooms or more, it just isn't realistic. So what's going to happen is the additional cars are going to end up on Premier Street, on Old Lillooet Road. People are going to try to park. So we're concerned about what that's going to do to the parking situation in the neighborhood. Perhaps there's ways to address it still in the proposal. There's over 300 bike parking stalls, I think mostly within the underground parking that are proposed as part of the development. You know, maybe they could find a way to reallocate some of that space underground for the cars and then find ways to put that or at least some of that parking for bicycles above ground. And we do hope that if the proposal does go through, I mean, I think it does need some reconsideration based on the neighborhood, that the engineering department will look at the parking situation within the neighborhood. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you for your comments, Clayton Wellwood. The next speaker I have is Kathleen Jarvis. Is Kathleen Jarvis joining us virtually? Oh, welcome, joining us here in person.
You.
When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. This is not what I'm accustomed to doing, so I have prepared notes. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Kathleen Jarvis. I too am a resident of Edgewater Estates, adjacent to the proposed development, so I'm speaking on item 8.5 as well. I just want to be clear that I'm speaking on behalf of myself, and I am in favor of social housing on the North Shore, but I do have concerns regarding the features of this specific housing project, the way it's been presented, and the impact on our neighborhood. I attended the Lillooet social housing public hearing in this room on October 24th, 2023, and I spoke with Tamsin Guppy, who was the planning staff member at the time responsible for the project. Tamsin gave me personal assurance that there would be sufficient parking provided for the development. And on the slide presentation delivered at that meeting, it was highlighted that parking was a neighborhood issue, stating that the future project would provide its own on-site parking for residents and guests. We were assured the design would soften the impact of the project by providing stepped building heights that would work with the topography, taking advantage of screening of the trees, and the maximum of 180 units was offered, but we were advised it was likely to be a lower number. We were assured that the project will also offer a relatively small increase to the existing traffic volumes. There is only one way in and one way out of Linmore. And this was recognized, and we were told that improvements of the Lillooet Road and the old Lillooet Road intersection would be, there would be a traffic assessment, and that was at the design phase, and I don't know where the assessment is at this stage. On December 4th, the council approved the rezoning change, presumably based on the information you're presented in that October meeting. And so council approval was given without a development plan because no developer had been assigned at that point. So subsequently, the Holiday Inn meeting on February 19th, 25, the proposed plan was unveiled to the surprise of all, with 188 social housing units within a 2 solid block, 6-story buildings. These buildings are above a hill and we're down here. So that probably feels like a 12-story building to the people who are living down below. So I encourage you to go and take a look at the neighborhood and the lay of the land to get a feel for that. But anyway, the feeling I came away from this meeting with is that the developer wanted to maximize the number of housing units on the property, and from there came up with supporting arguments. One might wonder if the developer sought consultants that would exonerate them from providing the true number of parking stalls required for the suburban development due to the developer's high cost of providing additional parking. Their claim that social housing renters earning up to possibly $120,000 per household, many with professional roles on the North Shore, are less likely to own a vehicle and more likely to ride bicycles than the general public just doesn't ring true. This community is over 1 kilometer walking distance to any service other than Superstore, and if the residents are doing a large shop, a car is generally necessary. So I just want to say this project as presented threatens injury to the neighborhood whose carrying capacity has already been compromised by densification over the last 16 years, an injury from which we are unlikely to recover. Please return this plan to the district staff to come up with an appropriate size development for this topographically challenging parcel of land that will have a limited impact on the neighborhood and its residents. The decision is yours.
Over time.
We are relying on you to protect our neighborhood.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker I have is Vicky Pasco. And I do recognize that we have two virtual participants that have raised their hands. Eric Jensen will be next. Vicky Pasco, and then Richie.
Good evening. Thanks for your time. I'm going to actually camp on what Aidan and Robert spoke about, which is coach houses. So my husband and I are the owners of 1619 Evelyn Street in Lynn Valley. And we've been born and raised on the North Shore, raised our children on the North Shore. Can't actually imagine anywhere more wonderful to live in this world. And we love our home, and we have a great piece of property that really lends itself very, very well for the building of a laneway home. It never really occurred to us that that would be something we would want to do, but this time last year, my husband was diagnosed with a devastating illness. And for us to remain in our home, we rely on the support of our son, who is here tonight with me. And he's at our house all the time, helping us with the house. And we're trying to plan for the future of what it might be. And so we talked about a laneway house so that him and his partner could live in the laneway house. And then eventually my husband and I move in the laneway house, they could live in the house and raise their family. And so we had no idea how much it would cost. And so we started talking to contractors, and we eventually realized that it's attainable and it's actually affordable for him and his partner to live in a beautiful 850 square foot laneway home. And then eventually I would live in that home with my husband, hopefully. And so we contracted with SmallWorks, and we were very excited. We went into a design contract with them. We've designed the home, and now we're at the place where we're submitting for permits. And we find now that with the extra requirements that the district has to build coach houses, the consultant fees, and then when consultants consult, they add additional costs. It's actually going to be 25% higher than what we were quoted, and we no longer can afford it. It's not attainable anymore. And so I do know that I hope there's room. I know that gentle density is the way that we need to go to build the housing that's required. My son and his partner currently live in a 500 square foot apartment that they're paying $3,000 a month for. They could live in this laneway home that we want to build for about $2,100 a month, paying that mortgage. That is affordable housing. We want to stay here. They want to stay here. He wants to be close to us to help us. We want him to be close. We want to be a part of him raising a family, hopefully one day. And so when we realized that this was not attainable any longer, it was actually devastating to us. And so I really hope that the district can look at the current requirements that they have that are actually quite different than other municipalities that make it not attainable. And so I implore you to reconsider and to work with companies like SmallWorks who have ideas. Nobody wants to cut corners. Nobody wants to build a piece on a piece of property that makes it unsafe. We're willing to upgrade and our sewer and our water, put in stormwater management as required, but there's other consultant fees and consultants involved that really are not necessary, and in other municipalities don't exist. So that's my ask of you, is to be open-minded and flexible, and to listen to people that know what they're doing, that have built many, many, many of these, to see what they have to say and to partner with them. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments, Vicky Pasco. The next speaker I have is virtual speaker Eric Jensen.
Can you hear me all right,
Jensen,
sir?
can you hear me?
I can hear you fantastic. Can you hear me?
Yes, but I'd love you to speak up nice and loud. It's coming in a little bit soft, but otherwise I can hear
get
you.
that mic a
Go
little
ahead.
bit closer to my mouth.
That helps. Thank you.
You got it. So as a great, sorry, before I start, good evening, your worship and council. Great to see everybody as always. That's a great lead into what I thought I might discuss with you all tonight. And so, you know, one of the things that has been reported with the SMUH proposals is staff have admitted that there's going to be an additional administrative burden on a per unit basis. And before we're adding this new layer of complexity, I would like council to direct staff to conduct a 15-year retrospective audit of bylaw changes to identify which regulations have added the most time to the permitting clock and the most headcount to the district's payroll. Every new technical requirement in a bylaw, whether related to energy, water, or slope hazards, adds a direct cost to the homeowner and an indirect cost to the district in enforcement. Council should request a report on the cumulative cost per square foot impact of municipal regulations since 2011 to see if we are legislating ourselves out of affordability. And I am extremely confident that should you make that recommendation or direct staff to do so, I believe tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars for homeowners and probably millions of dollars for the district are going to be found in savings by eliminating requirements that are just unnecessary and overly burdensome. The other thing that I wanted to, am I allowed to talk about the budget tonight at all?
Yes, yeah, that would be fine.
Okay,
yeah.
I wasn't sure if that was in the, I hadn't seen any notes about it. So
budget is one of those things you can kind of talk about anytime. Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
Fair enough. Thank you. You know, I want to just hammer on that point that the financial plan shows our debt servicing costs is nearly going to double by 2030. And again, I brought this up the last time I spoke, well, maybe not the last time, but recently anyways with you guys, that we were increasingly reliant on developer contributions to keep the lights on. If the permitting process remains complex and construction costs continue to rise due to district bylaws, right? We risk a slowdown in the very development we rely on to fund our infrastructure. So by increasing the requirements, we're going to decrease development. And my heart goes out to the folks that have been trying to get a coach house built or anything like that. You would think something like that would be really coveted and welcomed and encouraged by staff and by the district. And as somebody who has worked with somebody like the lady that spoke before me, it is a very challenging process to get a building permit. I mean, never mind for a single family home, but for a coach house, it's a whole nother party. So those are my thoughts, everybody. Thank you for your time as always.
Thank you for your comments, Eric Jensen. Next speaker I have is joining us in person, Mr. Teven. I saw your hand, and then I've got a hand in the second row here. And I think I saw a third hand, and that'll probably round us out. I thought I saw a third hand. All right. Come on up, Mr. Teven.
Let me get the overhead projector, please. Sorry about that. Oh, kind of washed out, isn't it? Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Peter Tevan, 1900 Block, Indian River Crescent. I want to provide a little commentary for you all to consider on the last two agenda items, the report on the Ironworkers Bridge and the idea of rail up sea to sky country. I think most of you are aware that transportation has been one of my most keen issues for a lot of years. It stems back to 2017 when I attended the public information meetings for the Mountain Highway Interchange Project. And I'll tell you then, I spoke with the project manager. As the son of a professional engineer, a civil and structural one, I'm very keenly aware of the concept of limited structural life for our built structures. So I asked him about that. How long have we got left with the Ironworkers Bridge? He said 30 years. That's now 21 years. We clarified. 30 years, he said, until chunks are falling off, holes in it. I said, so like 30 years until it's Patello shape? He said, exactly. 30 years until we have no choice but to replace and upgrade the Ironworkers Bridge. Now, I wrote on
20 years.
Sorry, now 21 years. And I checked with my friend, Mr. Metcalf. The announcement for the Dees Island Tunnel was 14 years ago. 14 years ago, they announced they were going ahead with it. They still haven't got shovels in the ground. We need to proceed on a new replacement for the Second Narrows Bridge 5 years ago. Not now. We need to get going on that, and I urge you all to support that. But keeping that in mind, I wrote an op-ed for the North Shore Daily Post in 2019, and I wrote there that this is what I wished on behalf of all my fellow citizens that all of our elected officials would do. Look 100 years into the future. This was my idea of what might exist 100 years into the future. LRT up the Sunshine Coast, LRT over into Port Moody, and also passenger rail up Sea to Sky Country. Look 100 years in the future and make sure every single decision you make along the way is a piece of the puzzle into that 100 years from now. We've seen the folly of constantly doing little mini projects and then undoing them 10 years later when they don't work and don't solve the problem. Please look further. And with that, I gave an image of what I felt would do the trick on the Ironworkers, and that this was the image. So I'm submitting that to you for your consideration in the black tray, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Teven, please. Yes, please. You could start with your name for the record. That would be appreciated.
Not a problem. Hi, everyone. My name is Akua Schatz. I live at 1001 Chamberlain Drive, and I also happen to be with Small Works. So we build infill housing in single-family neighborhoods, everything from sort of coach houses to multiplexes, and we have built over 500 of those. So we've done that in jurisdictions across the Metro Vancouver. And I'm here today to say that we're strongly in support of the district moving forward with small-scale multi-unit housing. It's really important work, and it aligns with what we're seeing on the ground. We have interest from across the district where people are asking us for these types of solutions. But I am here to echo concerns that have been shared by others as well, is that when we approve this, we're seeing significant challenges with implementation. And right now, the biggest barrier to delivering these homes isn't the zoning, it's the costs that are driven by the district. We're seeing in practice that as soon as a homeowner adds even a small amount of density, the projects trigger significant additional requirements. So when it comes to consultant requirements from the district, they're 3 times the cost of other comparable cities in the region. And this leads to, on average, construction costs being 25 to 30% higher. These are driven by municipal kind of external consultants, things like envelope engineers and other specialists that are well defined in that they're hoping to achieve better sustainability outcomes and stormwater management. However, what they are in the end doing is driving up significant costs. And I think the key thing here is to know that there is other ways to meet those requirements. as exist in other jurisdictions. The very same step code targets, the very same issues around stormwater management that are handled in a very different way by their municipalities in terms of determining pathways. They can be done through prescriptive standards, simplified stormwater approaches, and construction stage verification. And this is something that we really implore you to look at, because if SMUH is approved, but implementation continues through the same approach that is historical, we're scaling this problem. Where the housing may be permitted, but it's not financially viable to build, and uptakes on these projects are going to remain historically low in comparison with other jurisdictions, as we've seen for several years now. I think there's been about 8 coach houses built in the district in the last 10 years, where there's been well over 7,000 in just Vancouver. This tells you that the implementation is the problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I will just comment on item 8.6 just a little bit here, in that what we're considering tonight doesn't actually change whether coach houses are approved or not. It also doesn't change the allowable buildable square footage on properties either way. So if people have the impression that passing this tonight means that you will have more buildable space in your properties, that's not actually embedded in this. That would be a separate discussion in future about a change to residential single family zoning, and it's not contemplated in what we're seeing tonight. So if people have been told that if this gets passed, that you would all of a sudden be able to build more square footage, that's actually not embedded in this project at this time. Okay. Well, I don't see any additional speakers, and so I'm prepared to move on with this evening's meeting. Tonight, we do have a delegation here from Hollyburn Community Services Society, and I'll get them to move into position and get ready for their presentation. What's different about a delegation rather than public input is we have an organization within the community that wants to update us on what's going on with their organization, and they're given a 5-minute opportunity to give us a briefing on what's going on with their organization, and then there's an opportunity for council to have some follow-up questions clarifying the presentation. And so it's a little bit different than a normal public input opportunity. But at this point, I'd like to welcome our guests from the Hollyburn Community Services Society, and welcome. You have 5 minutes to present to council.
Thank you. And good evening, Mayor and Council. Nice to be here. Nice to see everybody. My name is Mike Thorne. I'm a longtime resident of North Van and a longtime director of Hollyburn Community Services Society. The Society is a social service organization entering into its 22nd year of operation on the North Shore, and our core philosophy is centered around the statement, "We find a way." This means we get to know each program participant on a one-to-one basis, and we work with individuals over the long term and in collaboration with other North Shore nonprofits. I'm just gonna grab this and do the slides. You go. I can do this from here, right? We provide services in 3 areas. Youth empowerment programs, which include a North Shore Youth Safe House, our youth employment programs, and the youth education navigation services. This continuum of services makes it possible to start working with a youth experiencing homelessness to find a pathway to permanent housing and a certificate program at VCIT. Seniors and families programs. These services include homelessness prevention and shelter diversion, tenant support services in partnership with other affordable housing providers, and a transitional house for seniors in the city of North Vancouver. And finally, survivors of abuse programs. We are contracted by the province as a community-based victim services provider and are a lead partner with the North Shore Intimate Partner Violence Unit. These services include safety planning for survivors of abuse and support for individuals through the criminal justice system. I'll now turn it over to Mark Friesen, our Executive Director, who will describe current trends and our strategic priorities going forward.
Thank you, Mike, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to back up a slide and I would be remiss if I didn't highlight not all, but some of our team members are on this slide. We'll leave these slides with you to peruse at your discretion. We're not going to read through what's on there, but I wanted to just highlight the team while we're here because they're amazing and they make our work possible. This slide outlines some of the impact that is possible. Again, I'm not going to belabor the point and go through these numbers specifically, but happy to answer questions about any of the programs that Mike just described, or the numbers that are on the screen right now. I will just highlight that, as many of you know, we've started doing a lot more housing of different kinds, and that's the spectrum of housing, but a key focus on affordable housing. But our core focus is social services. And so our core, where housing is in addition to our core work in doing social services. In terms of our impact, nope, I mixed myself up. So these are some of the challenges that we're seeing before I talk about the impact and some key programs from the last year. And this highlights and reinforces the importance of our core focus on social services, as individuals who are at risk in the various ways that Mike just alluded to need more than infrastructure. And we're certainly hopeful to provide that in partnership with yourselves and others to make more housing available, but it's the wraparound services that puts us in a position of being able to address some of the highlights on the screen. Youth and access to services and support for youth in a number of areas. This slide talks about mental health as one challenge, but I will highlight the demand is primarily where the growth is in, unfortunately, seniors and access to housing. This slide is highlighting some of the biggest announcements from the past year. So thanks to partnership and the support of this council, and I will extend my gratitude and appreciation, land was made available for the Hollybrook project at Delbrook and Queens down the road here. I will highlight that as a community housing fund project, it was intended to have 20% deep subsidy, 50% rent geared to income, and 30% market. But after the fire at Silverlyn, which displaced tenants who were BC Housing recipients, BC Housing did agree to change that formula, and we've ended up with 28 deep subsidy units. And BC Housing did agree to fund the difference. And I want to highlight that because, as we all know, the provincial budget did not have extra money flowing around this year. So that was a big success. And so thank you for the district staff for supporting, Mayor and Council for making that project and the land available possible. We opened Morningstar Transitional Home for Seniors last year, and then coming up in the coming year is going to be our Hidden Housing Solutions Program, which is going to be a pilot approach to pair up individuals who are overhoused, who have more house than they would like at this stage in life, with individuals who are in need of housing. This speaks to our core purpose, finding a way forward. Mike talked about that. I just want to highlight in terms of our request to yourselves, it's to keep doing what you're doing, which is the stuff on the screen. So support from the district makes possible the North Shore Youth Safe House. I already talked about Hollybrook land. The transitional housing units that sites that we have are also on district land. And then the other two on there are self-explanatory. I'll just highlight right now in terms of some of the comments we heard earlier of folks suggesting that access to affordable housing will not take the form only of single-family housing. We are currently accepting applications for the below-market units at Baden Park, which again was a project supported by this council, and I want to extend my gratitude and appreciation for that. 33 below-market units. I checked today with our housing coordinator, we've received 258 applications, and just a small sample, that includes families who work on the North Shore, and if they get in, if they're accepted for eligibility, they will no longer be commuting across the Second Narrows Bridge. They will get to live where they work. So more of that, please, and thank you for making projects like that possible. I'm over time, I'll leave it at that.
Much. Council, someone move receipt? Moved by Councillor Murray, second by Councillor Ma. Councillor Murray, do you have comments or questions?
No, just thank you for all of your work and thanks for the presentation. I guess one question I might have is in regards to the youth safe house. We know that the ability to access counseling services and treatment is more challenging than ever as the population rises. And with the increase in youth mental health, how is that driving some of the challenges that you're facing? And do we need more youth safe houses for young people that are finding it challenging to manage life and home?
No, I appreciate the question. This is team will balk a little bit at me for me revealing our cards, but it's premature to say this because this is early stages of exploration for us. Our youth safe house is the only essentially emergency shelter for minors, for folks who are not of adult age, and there is still a need for that. But where we are seeing an increasing demand for youth is actually young adults with mental health challenges and some of the need for recovery services that you're alluding to. So I don't want to be quoted on this, but we are looking at exploring the youth safe house, and is there a way to
Hold on.
make it possible to
You're
do
at a public meeting.
I know.
You
It's true.
quoted on
Fair enough.
You said
But this will commit our team to it. So too bad. It's a good direction to go in. To see if it's possible for the youth safe house to accommodate both minors and those young adults who are of adult age. Right now, that's not possible in the current operating model. So that's one. And then, of course, working with partners. We're in early conversation with Coast Mental Health about them because they're a large agency that offers more support services than we do, about expanding their services on the North Shore in partnership with us.
Is there an opportunity to look at another site to accommodate those, another youth safe house to accommodate those young adults?
That would be phenomenal. And actually, I will take that opportunity to highlight what's possible. You know, oftentimes it's encouraging tonight to see conversation around the SSMUH rules, bylaws, et cetera. Because sometimes when it comes to housing, we focus on large developments. And what we've seen to be possible through single family homes is a lot. And so, yeah, if additional single family lots that, could be repurposed into multi-units on another site, that would have a huge impact. And then we could separate it from the current youth safe house operations. So yes, absolutely. And another one or two more single family homes to focus on programming where there's a need like that would be terrific.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconder.
Yes, thank you very much, Mike and Mark. Welcome. Looking forward to your event in a couple of weeks. We talk about youth, and we're trying to work on engaging the youth a little more. When I say we, council. On the other end, we hear about the stats that right now 1 in 5 people in BC are 65 and over, and about 8 years it's going to be 1 in 4. What does the district need to be doing more to get ready for that from your perspective, and some of the services that you provide to seniors?
The tough question. I'll see if my colleague Mike has anything. I will just highlight, from our perspective, a variety of housing. When jurisdictions have singular approaches to housing, there's less of an ability to accommodate diverse individuals with diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences, and diverse incomes. And with rising proportion of seniors as our overall population, they come with different backgrounds and different needs. Actually, at a recent board meeting, we had one of our board members asked our senior program manager, what are the trends that she's seeing with seniors? And she couldn't pick one because the reasons that seniors are at risk, specifically around housing, are just varied. And rather than one trend coming up above them all, it's increasing number of different reasons that folks are in housing precarity. And the solution to that, where we've been able to make a difference, is access to things like transitional homes, townhomes, apartment buildings. One of our longstanding programs in the city of North Vancouver since 2012 is 6 apartment units that are for permanent housing for folks, right? And we've had seniors in there since the beginning. But that's not going to be for everyone. For those individuals, it makes for a huge difference. For others, they're going to want more of a Kiwanis supported living situation where they're in community, and others still would prefer to share a single family home with less number of people, right? So that's all I can say is, so if you see proposals for housing that offer a mix of housing types, I think that's helping.
Okay, thank you.
Didn't you add to that?
Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike and Mark. Thank you for the work you do and the contribution you're making to North Vancouver District. You mentioned this concept of pairing those with large, perhaps not completely occupied homes, or people who live single in a large home with people, seniors I think you're talking about with the housing need. If you could expand a little bit about this project, and is there anything the district could be doing to assist in that? Because it certainly is a thought that we've had before. We look around and see a lot of housing which isn't being very well occupied, and people who need such housing.
I'm quite excited to share more about that. So the Hidden Housing Solutions Program, many of you actually might have participated in an exploration around some workshops that were held before my time at Hollywood with my colleague, led by my colleague Joy Hayden, and collaborators at SFU, where they arrived at that concept. And so that was a community consultation process that was quite involved. Many of you were participants in that, will probably remember participating in that. And the concept is exactly as you're describing. So folks who are overhoused, who anticipated using their home for family or loved ones, and where that's no longer, for a variety of reasons, is no longer the case. The idea is to have them supported with someone, one of our team members who's going to be a third party, and match them up with individuals who are looking for housing, but outside of the Residential Tenancy Act. And the reason is we want to target folks who are, for one reason or another, are not comfortable with the idea of renting to a conventional tenant and being encumbered by all the rules under the Residential Tenancy Act. So our staff would provide both parties, the person who's going to move into the house and essentially the landlord, with third-party support to do a trial period, after which both parties can walk away if it's not working, because it's essentially putting folks into a roommate situation. It's not going to work for everybody, but we're hopeful and optimistic it's going to work for some folks. And we're just working right now with legal counsel to develop the agreements that need to be signed by all parties, including us, to manage it in a third-party capacity. So in terms of what the district can do, once we've got the program particulars and we're ready to take applications, promoting it would be great in all ways, shapes, and forms. So virtually, we'll have some in-person events to tell your friends. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Back.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike and Mark, for both being here tonight. Good to see you both. Hollyburn is a go-to name on the North Shore, and we just appreciate the work that you do. One of the points on your slides I noticed was when you were saying uncovering what's beneath the surface is a need for a managed RV site for those who are living in their vehicles. I'm wondering how much you put into exploring that idea, as folks living in RVs is something that we're seeing across the district and in a number of areas. So just wondering if you've how much thought you've given, and if you've seen a model that could work.
I'm going to start by saying we've given it some thought, but not a lot, primarily because our initial explorations revealed how challenging putting together an operation like that would be. In communities south of the border in the state of Washington where they've piloted them, they have worked well. They have had a significant impact. They do carry a lot of challenges. Key features are dedicated piece of land, social service staffing support, and clear health and safety guidelines for folks to be abiding by while they're there, but connections with social workers while they're at the RV site. We do have a rough proposal for a pilot, like an 18-month pilot, to give it a go. The challenge would be finding a chunk of land where both the surrounding community, the district and other players are willing to try something that carries a lot of risks. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Pope.
Thank you. Well, thank you both very much for coming tonight. And as you know, I am so deeply grateful for all of the work that you do in our community and the innovative ideas you're bringing forward. I just wanted to pick up on the seniors in need of housing because I was recently down at the shelter. And I know that seniors are in our community are more and more in need of housing and are in vulnerable situations. But I actually did not know that 66% of their clientele in the shelter now at this shelter are seniors, and they're seniors from this community. And that was quite shocking to me. Because it's a situation that we had heard that was getting worse, and it's starting to happen. And we're well into it happening, as I'm sure you're very much aware. And the other thing that came to light in speaking to the managers down there was that they really need the landscape is really shifting for people who are in need of housing. And I wondered if you were noticing this as well, that there's like a whole sector of people needing higher barrier types of housing. Like there's a whole bunch of seniors in there who, are not drug addicts and have not been living on the street prior to now. They've been living in rentals where they've been kicked out or any number of reasons. So they have hugely different needs than people who are, the other type, entrenched street life, drug addicts. And so I think we need to be thinking in terms of creating different types of housing for all of those different types of seniors as well within that sector, which I'm sure is also very challenging, but goes to what you were saying about the diversity of housing needed.
Well, and I will say that, so we recently rented out I think it's 25 units, not here, but at the Burquitlam station, below market units that Anthem, the developer, had been required by the municipality to provide. Off the top of my head, at least half of those went to seniors. And then of those, half were from the North Shore who couldn't find access to housing. I anticipate it will be likewise with Baden Park, that of the 33 units, a chunk of those will be seniors who our team has been supporting for some time to move around including the shelter, that our seniors team is watching closely to say, okay, let's get them into Baden Park, because those rents they're not deep subsidy, but they're far more affordable than market.
Well, thank you for all of the good work.
Thank you.
I'd be kind of curious about the trend on that. I mean, I used to do a lot of work at the Union Gospel Mission downtown. I got to say 30 years ago, that was a long time ago, overwhelmingly it was seniors that they were looking after at that time. Ebb and flow cycle, is it heading in one particular direction, but is it just that there are other ways that are accommodating younger people in the system, or has something changed? I just remember it being overwhelmingly seniors. Maybe that was my 20-year-old view. Maybe I thought 50-year-olds were seniors at the time. I don't know. But what trends would you say you see?
Well, along those lines, and this goes back to my comments about our youth safe house, still a demand for minors, but not the same numbers that we saw. If I look at our historical records, it's actually not the same as it was 10 years ago. So there's still a need, it's not the same. Now, I will make a comment, but I will reinforce, I do not have the data or research to back this up. Social service organizations and the Ministry of Children and Families have put a lot of effort and focus into family reunification. I would like to think that is working. I cannot back that up. So I really want to highlight that, but I would like to think that renewed efforts on family reunification have proportionally dropped the number of need for minors for emergency crisis services. And then on the flip side, as Councillor Ma highlighted, increasing proportion of the overall population that are seniors. So those two, the one possibility that I can't back up with research, but I would like to assume is a reasonable assumption, combined with a rising proportion of our seniors, it would make sense that that's where we're seeing the most need. And the other part of the seniors that will not be a surprise to anybody here is individuals who are on a fixed income. That's the biggest challenge. And so in a market where costs of living are dynamic and going dynamic one way up, when you're on a fixed income, it reinforces the importance of housing that's diverse and kept below market through non-market rules, bylaws, partners, funding. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your presentation, Council. Receipt has been moved and seconded. Prepared to call the question on the matter. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. On behalf of Council, thank you very much for your presentation here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, Council, as we're moving into the report section, I do note that there's a couple of items there that are really just up for adoption and not really debate. And I'd like to move a consent agenda with items 8.2 and 8.3. This is the financial plan approval bylaw and the update of the North Shore Emergency Management Office regulations. So it's been moved by Councillor Murray. Would anybody like either of those items withdrawn? Okay, seconded by Councillor Back. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. If you are here for items 8.2 or 8.3, they have just passed. Next item up for discussion is item 8.1 business license for Blue Sky Daycare 431 Vienna Crescent. And do we have a comment from staff? But this item's just returning back from me. Ms. Branson, you have a comment?
Is the mic working there? Yes. Okay. So good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is an application to amend the business license for Blue Sky Daycare at 431 Vienna Crescent to increase their capacity from 8 children to 14 children. A public hearing was held on March 16th to receive public input. 4 members of the public spoke, 3 in support, and 3 written submissions were also received in support. The key themes of support included high quality, safe, and structured care, the importance of reliable childcare for working families, ongoing challenges in securing childcare and growing demand for spaces, and the benefits of inclusive support for children with diverse needs. Council raised 2 questions. First, regarding the fire code requirements, and staff was able to confirm that a single exit is sufficient and is provided via the main entrance of the east side of the house. And then secondly, regarding the childcare spaces adjacent to this area, information was provided with the staff report in attachment 3. But in summary, the north Lonsdale and Delbrook, as well as the upper Capilano areas, are both meeting or nearing their targets, and Lynn Valley continues to have the greatest unmet need. And there are some gaps, so some neighborhoods within those areas that still remain in need, those including Braemar, Grosswoods, Boundary, Lynn Canyon, Upper West Lynn, and West Lynn Terrace. So this childcare operator would have an opportunity to help serve some of those communities. So staff recommend approval of the business license amendment and are available for questions.
Thank you very much. I'll be supporting issuance of the license. Councillor Pope, is that from before or is that for this item? From before. Councillor Hanson, you're seconding the matter? Okay, great. Just my own comments. I think it's a reasonable increase in the neighborhood. We definitely need it, and I hope it can go to help support. It sounds like a lot of the parents that raised concerns in the public hearing, not concerns, support in the public hearing. We're really hopeful that this would provide enough flexibility so that you could have siblings attend the same facility. And so I'm hopeful that that can happen. I'm glad to hear that we clarified the fire escape route. The question at the time for people who were at the public hearing was one of the windows was marked as an escape route. And we just wanted to make sure that that was an additional bonus. It had nothing to do with the normal escape routes that are required for childcare facilities. So I'm glad that's been clarified, that it is a bonus extra space on top of the requirements for that area. So I'll be supportive of the recommendation.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Hanson.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Please to support the application to increase the capacity at Blue Sky Daycare from 8 to 14 children. This Blue Sky Daycare have operated in this location since 2020 without complaints. A public meeting was held on March 16th. There was no significant opposition. It's a matter of common knowledge to everyone in this council that increased daycare capacity is needed across the district, and I'm pleased to vote in favor of this application.
Thank you very much. I see no further speakers. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Moving on to item 8.4. This is bylaw 8778, text amendment, rezoning 100 Amherst Avenue. This item is returning from public hearing. Do we have any comment from staff? We'll just go straight to council.
Your Worship, nothing further to add. The item is returning from public hearing and we're seeking council's direction with respect to second and third reading. Thank you.
Thank you very much. After having considered the matter through the public hearing process and hearing the comments and concerns from the community, and I will be recommending and putting forward a motion to give no further readings and abandon the bylaw at first reading. That's been seconded by Councillor Miri. Okay. I don't come to this decision easily. I think that from the very beginning, Chemtrade has been a very responsible corporate partner with an excellent safety record, and they certainly seemed very conscientious in their operations about including the community in everything they've been involved in. One of the challenges I have is that I think that the municipalities don't have the right tools to deal with this kind of a situation. We only have the luxury of this check-in on that will result in that would result in proposed improvements to safety because of the lease conditions with the Port Metro Vancouver changing and them having to move it onto district property. If the council does approve it tonight, then that would mean no further check-ins and no further ability for future councils to be able to change that risk on that site. And I find that to be unacceptable. I think the community expects us to be able to check in advanced projects to the best available control technologies for effluent, make sure that the safety on the site is advancing with technology. And I just don't think that the municipalities have the right tools to be able to deal with that. I'm not opposed to other future proposals on this site of an industrial nature, including hazardous materials questions. I'm not opposed to them producing the materials on site that do not have a hazardous component to it, and that they can continue to operate those functions on the site if possible. Although I know that this decision would have a very limiting effect on their ability to get probably their highest margin piece produced. And I'm also would not be disappointed if the provincial government either gave us the power to have those check-ins in future with an empowered permit system that will allow municipalities to have a permit issued for a series of years and then be able to revisit the matter. Or if the provincial government decides in future that they think it is a significant project, that they would decide whether they need to take control of the project and do their own. Like I said, from the very beginning, Chemtrade has been a responsible partner in the community, very responsive to community concerns, and I think that they should be commended for their openness in this process. Having said that, I can't accept the condition that the municipality would no longer have the ability to review safety standards going forward. We would no longer have the ability to change the nature of the business at that site. And as we continue to grow as a municipality, that is going to be an increasing conflict and risk for the municipality that I can't bear with the tools that we have. So I will be recommending and supporting giving no further readings to this matter and abandoning it at first reading. Councillor Murray, your comments?
Thank you, Mayor Little. I was a councillor when the first rezoning for Chemtrade came to this municipality, and it was for the subdivision of the property that is known currently as the Dollarton Business Park. And it was a very extensive process. It was a series, multiple meetings, a quantitative risk assessment that was peer reviewed, a great deal of information that was brought forward to the table. And Canoxy, there's been so many name changes with the companies over the years, but at the time it was Canoxy. And, you know, they committed to improvements in order to get that subdivision. When we finished that work and when that decision was made, we looked into the future and we knew that the business at the time had indicated that they would be winding down and that operation would no longer continue. And so there was this sunset clause on that any future decisions. And I was born in that community as well. My grandfather came east of the Seymour in the 1930s, and the community was built up by the port and industry. And I've always been supportive of industry because they pay the wages that are needed in order to live in this community. Even then, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it's never been a bargain. Maybe in the 30s when you could pick up some acreage for $100, but no longer. But I know that what has changed is the community around it. And it's been significant change. And like the mayor, I understand the work and the review and the responsibility that these chemical companies, and we have many of them in the port, have put into their operations. But as we change, we need to be able to have that ability to be able to have these discussions and these conversations again. Perpetuity is a long time. And it's something that 25 years ago, we weren't thinking of because our understanding was the operation would cease. And so, I think until we recognize the changes that are currently in place, but the future changes of this community, we are going to be needing extra ability to address what may need to be applied to operations that are maybe contrary to a growing and evolving neighborhood. And that is intensifying density in an area that was, when these plants were built, was never considered. So we have to be cautious. We have to approach this very carefully. And I too, like Mayor Little, am open to the opportunities and the tools that the province may indeed give us, rather than the ones that they're not giving us now, to address other issues on this agenda tonight. Thank you, Mayor Little.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pope.
Thank you very much. This decision to grant second and third reading or abandon the bylaws, bylaw 3778, is not just procedural, it is consequential. It is about risk, responsibility, and the kind of community we choose to be for ourselves, our children, and grandchildren in the future. Last month marked the 20th anniversary of the Queen of the North ferry disaster, something no one believed could ever happen. A BC ferry sank, people died, a scenario considered impossible, and yet it happened. And that is the lens I ask my fellow councillors to apply tonight. Chemtrade has operated at this site for over 60 years without a major incident. Risk assessments say it meets current standards, but this bylaw is not about the past. It is about the future, because the world has changed. We are now in an era where critical infrastructure, including chemical facilities, water systems, and energy plants, are drone targets in modern conflict, including the Iran war. We are also in a region vulnerable to earthquakes and other unpredictable events. So the question before council is simple. Do we continue to permit a chlorine plant in close proximity to residential neighborhoods, or do we choose a different path? By granting further readings to this bylaw, we are making a statement about acceptable risk. And I would argue this level of risk is no longer acceptable. This facility is uniquely located, one of the only chlorine plants in Canada situated so close to a dense population. If the absolute worst were to occur, whether through accident, natural disaster, or deliberate act, the consequences would be catastrophic. I recognize the complexity of this decision. I recognize the importance of chlorine in water treatment, the role this facility plays in regional supply, and the real impact on jobs and workers. But this is not a choice between safety and necessity. It is a choice about location. And I'm not saying chlorine production should end. I'm saying it should not be here in the District of North Van, close to homes, schools, and thousands of people, not in my backyard. Between now and the end of the current timeline in 2030, there is an opportunity, and I would say an obligation by other senior levels of government, to transition this plant to a safer, more appropriate location in a more remote area, a federal or provincial site away from homes, schools, and families. Council approving this bylaw would move us in the wrong direction. It extends the life of a high-risk industrial use in place where the consequences of failure are simply too great. We cannot rely solely on past performance to justify future risk, because history has shown us again and again that the unthinkable does happen. And when it does, it is communities like ours that pay the price. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pope. Councillor Ma.
Okay. I have read the feedback emailed to council, considered the comments that during the 2 nights of public hearing, and reviewed the staff report. I'm not going to speak for the entire council and respect that individuals will have their own opinions. I acknowledge that the concerns raised by some residents and the many people who spoke at the public hearing. I also heard those who spoke in favor of the application. I have given this a lot of thought and consideration. To me, the 2 key issues are interrelated. They're issues of acceptable risk and safety. For me, I don't make this decision lightly. I look at the almost 70 years of operations without major issues. I also note that if the majority of council supports this rezoning, the applicant will implement additional safety measures, including limiting the number of rail cars loaded with chlorine to 32 and constructing a new enclosed rail car loading facility. There were a lot of issues brought up and a lot of information presented to council. But I'm looking at whether this is a safe operation and whether the level of risk is acceptable. Based on these points, I believe that the current operation can continue on this site and in a safe manner. And I will support the rezoning application receiving 2nd and 3rd reading. Thank you.
Councillor Ma. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. Like Councillor Ma, I support the bylaw text amendment that will allow the continued manufacture of liquid chlorine at 100 Amherst Avenue. I thank all members of the public who have shared their views. I thank staff for all the work they have done. I thank the applicant for all of the information that has been provided, and thank my council colleagues for their comments. In coming to my decision, I have considered whether the ongoing manufacture of liquid chlorine at this location is safe. And I have arrived at the decision that the continued manufacture of liquid chlorine at 100 Amherst does not pose an unacceptable risk to district residents. Factors that I have taken into account are, first of all, the opinion of Baker Engineering risk consultants that the proposal meets the acceptable risk thresholds. Secondly, the opinion of Risk Tech Solutions retained by the district that the proposal is safe. Thirdly, the fact that liquid chlorine has been manufactured on this site since 1957 without any significant accident. And 4, the fact that the applicant will be making very significant major investments in the safety of the plant, including constructing an enclosed rail car loading facility. The proposal does not call for any increase in the volume of liquid chlorine manufactured on the site, and the proposal is supported by the Port Authority, who have agreed to extend their lease to 2044. In short, I believe the proposal will not jeopardize the safety of residents. At the same time, I'm aware that this facility plays an important role in manufacturing liquid chlorine that is used to keep our drinking water safe. We were told that this facility provides over 40% of Canada's liquid chlorine and more than 70% of the chlorine used for drinking water treatment in Western Canada. In this way, in my view, the ongoing manufacture of liquid chlorine at 100 Amherst can be seen to contribute to the health and safety of district residents. At the public hearing, many comments were made about rail safety. This is an issue regulated by the federal government. Like all areas of public policy, regulations around railways invariably involve a balancing of various interests. It would be wrong for me to impose my views on this area of federal responsibility. We also heard a lot of comment about bleach can be a safer substitute for liquid chlorine. Again, in my view, this lies far beyond my responsibilities as a district councillor. So in my view, my job is to determine whether this land use can be safely performed at this site, and I have concluded that it can be. And for these reasons, I support the bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Back.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Little. Given the others who have spoke before me, I'll try not to repeat too many points and keep my comments brief. But for me, like my colleagues, this is a land use decision. It's one about safety and acceptable level of risks, which has been said, and I feel that that's the core of the decision we're making tonight. I will be supporting the staff recommendation that this was given second and third readings at this time. I do want to acknowledge that it's not a simple or easy decision. We've heard a wide range of perspectives, both through the public hearing process and in the several months leading up. And as a council, we've had an opportunity to sit down and at the facility, learn more about it and speak with the Chemtrade team. And the community has had many opportunities to provide input in the months leading up to the hearing. So I think this is certainly a decision that needs to recognize all of the concerns that were heard and deserves to take those concerns seriously. But ultimately, our role here is to make a land use decision. And when I look at this site, I see a long-standing business that's been part of this community for decades. It isn't a proposal to introduce a new use into a new area. This is about the continuation and modernization of an existing use within an established industrial area. That context matters. This is land that's been industrial employment for many, many decades, and historically this business has fulfilled that role. I think it's important to recognize not just the historical safety record of this operation, which has been mentioned, goes back many decades, but the steps being taken to further improve safety going forward. The proposal includes a number of meaningful upgrades to how the facility will operate. That includes a new fully enclosed rail car loading building designed to keep the process contained. There's also been a significant long-term reduction in on-site chlorine storage. So this is about allowing this business to continue to modernize and increase safety standards, which I feel are already at a level that I'm comfortable with in terms of level of risk for the surrounding community. This facility represents a number of significant well-paying jobs and contributes to a diverse local economy here on the North Shore and in the District of North Vancouver. And those types of jobs are not easily replaced. At the same time, I fully acknowledge that the surrounding area has evolved over the decades. We see increasing residential development in this neighborhood, which is one of our town centers, and we're continuing to plan for more growth. So that does raise legitimate questions about compatibility, and I think those are important questions for us to grapple with as a council. But in this case, I come back to the fact that what's being proposed here is already taking place, and it's not introducing a new use to the site. I've heard all of the concerns on both sides of this issue. And when I weigh all of that, the longstanding industrial designation, the history of the use, the track record of this operator over several decades, and the role that this facility plays in our local economy, I do believe that this use remains appropriate in this location. So I will be supporting the staff recommendation in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Back. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship. I have really struggled with this decision. I've gone back and forth on it. And it's been it's probably one of the hardest decisions I've made in the last two councils I've been on. Our responsibility tonight is to determine whether this land use change is compatible with our community's safety, our long-term planning vision, and our risk tolerance as elected officials. After reviewing the evidence and listening to the public, I believe denial is the prudent and responsible decision. This is not a reflection on the company itself. The company has had no accidents, has done remarkable upgrades in the meantime before coming to this wanting these newer upgrades. First, this proposal is fundamentally incompatible with the future of Maplewood. Our OCP envisions a complete, livable, mixed-use community with significant residential growth, introducing hazardous industrial activity in perpetuity. That's what I underline, in perpetuity, in an area of the DNV OCP has designated a growing residential and employment area of development. Second, while the QRA meets technical thresholds, the consequences of a chlorine release can be catastrophic. Low probability chlorine releases can cause deaths, long-term health impacts, and large-scale evacuations. And I find that the can't talk tonight. I find that the residual risk unacceptable. There is cumulative societal risk. Even if individual risk is low, societal risk, i.e. that many people exposed at one time, can be high when dense housing is nearby. I also want to note that with the in perpetuity, the irreversibility of the decision that we make tonight weighs heavily. Future councils will inherit the risk with no sunset and no term on a lease and no ability to monitor upgrades in the future. Third, rail transport is a major concern. Rail operations are federally regulated, meaning we cannot control routing, speed, or maintenance. Yet the rail corridor passes through dense residential areas outside of the land we are speaking about tonight. We cannot meaningfully mitigate off-site rail risk, and that is a critical gap. Fourth, if safer solutions, i.e. sodium hypochlorite, UV, are available, our land use decision should reflect that as the safer, responsible thing for our community to do. As stewards of public safety, we must consider not only likelihood of consequences. For these reasons, land use incompatibility, unacceptable residual risk, rail vulnerabilities, safer alternatives, emergency response limitations, land use in perpetuity, and irreversible decision. I support denial of bylaw 8778.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Council, I see no further speakers on the matter. I'm prepared to call the question, and the motion on the floor is to deny the change. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried with Councillors Ma, Back, and Hanson opposed. Thank you very much, Council. Okay, the next item up for discussion is item 8.5. This is development permit 4.25 Lillooet social housing. So let me just step out for a minute.
Oh.
Right. You want me to start it?
Yeah, start it.
Right. Next question is development permit 4.25 Lillooet social housing. We have comments from staff.
Your Worship, we do have a staff presentation of materials to share with Council tonight with respect to the development permit. I'd just like to note this is returning after a rezoning, which was approved by Council in December of 2023, where Council established various matters in zoning such as use, density, parking, and so on. I know there have been other questions raised tonight and in correspondence with respect to these matters, but they were matters that Council concluded previously. And a development permit before council tonight is with respect to compliance with development permit guidelines. And staff will speak to those particular guidelines and how the application is compliant with those. There are no variances requested to the current zoning standards in these development permits. And this is for a significant supportive, a social housing project with significant affordability attached to it, which is the culmination of many years of work with BC Housing and the District of North Vancouver to support affordability in the community. And staff are recommending the application move forward, and staff are prepared to give a presentation for council tonight.
So just before I hand it over to Kevin for your comments, I think there's a key point in there. I think it goes a slightly one step beyond what you said, Mr. Milburn. And to be clear, when it comes to a development permit, the council cannot unreasonably withhold the issuance of a development permit. And so what that means is that if you don't like the parking layout and you don't like the massing of the building and you don't like the density of the building, that's actually not a valid reason for objecting to the building permit. And so if council can vote against it, but you need to provide reasons that are outside of that, outside of the zoning and massing for the site. I say that just simply, and you could vote for it as well. I say that simply because a lot of the public input that came forward tonight was focused on the massing of the building, and that's not actually an eligible consideration when we're talking about issuance of a development permit. That was for back when there was a discussion about the zoning on the site. Mr. Zhang, welcome. And I do have to step out for just a moment. And so I've asked Councillor Forbes as acting mayor to come over and take over chairing. I should be back within about 5 or 10 minutes. And but please carry on.
Great. All right. Thank you, Your Worship. So good evening, members of council and members of the public. I have a few opening remarks. So my name is Kevin Zhang, development planner with the district. And with me is Mackenzie Stonehawker, also a development planner with the district. So for council's consideration tonight is development permit 4.25, which permits the development of a social housing project at the intersection of Old Lillooet and Lillooet Road, containing 188 affordable rental units in two 6-story buildings. So to set a bit of a context, tonight is really the culmination of a multi-year effort by council and staff to secure much needed affordable housing in the district. In 2021, council directed staff to explore developing affordable housing on district-owned lands, including this site. 2 years later, in 2023, after hearing from the community through a public hearing, council adopted OCP and zoning amendment bylaws for the site, which set the use, density, and building height for the social housing project. And as the mayor mentioned, what remains for discussion tonight are focusing, and also the focus of tonight's meeting, are development permit related items, specifically the 4 following development permit areas. So first, the overall design of the building or buildings addresses the form and character design guidelines by following the topography, including accessible entrances and incorporating layered landscaping and a central courtyard. Second, energy, water, and GHG reduction DPA guidelines are addressed by targeting BC Step Code Level 4 with 0 fossil fuel emissions and other energy saving designs like low flow fixtures. Third, the slope hazard DPA guidelines are addressed by establishing a 10-meter building setback between the development and the southern slope, as you can see on the image to the bottom left corner of the image there. And fourth, this setback I just mentioned also doubles to protect the ecologically valuable habitat on the southern slope, thereby addressing protection of natural environment DPA guidelines. Also, I just want to mention that there is also significant invasive species removal in this area. In terms of the public process, the development permit application was presented to the public for a further round of consultation, in addition to the public engagement that occurred at the rezoning stage. Feedback we have received so far include both support and concerns. with concerns focused around traffic issues that already exist in the area, as well as that the need to provide enough parking on the site. While issues related to the traffic in the area are beyond the scope of an individual application, this application has responded by proposing to extend the left turn lane northbound on Lillooet Road, improve signal timing at that intersection, and additionally, they've also redesigned the parkade to increase the capacity from 107 vehicles to 131 vehicles. In conclusion, staff have assessed this development permit application and found that it's generally compliant with applicable development permit area guidelines. Therefore, we recommend the approval of development permit 4.25. Both staff and the applicant are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, council, looking for a motion. Okay, I'm prepared to support the staff recommendation. Is there a seconder on the matter? Second by Councillor Pope. Just my own comments on this. I do hear the comments and concerns of the community and concerns about the massing of the building. And this has been a tricky spot. I remember way back in the day when we looked at this spot, we looked at it being an extension of the Holiday Inn potentially and having much more massing with the Holiday Inn or a convention center site or some other kind of thing. All of them presented quite significant challenges to the transportation network in the area. But I think that providing this clear social benefit to the broader community is a good reuse of this site. And so it's something that we definitely want to see more of in our community where we reasonably can. I understand the concern about parking and its impact into the neighborhoods around, and I'd be happy to continue a discussion with our staff about potentially changing some of the curbside regulations in around Premier Street and the neighboring flanking streets, Old Lillooet and such. I guess looking at potential time limit with resident-only exemptions to that, so that there is still reasonable opportunity for the townhouse projects further to the north of the site to have access to parking, not simply just pushed out of the neighborhood because something has such a low standard for parking in it. I will say that more broadly, it's going to be hard, but our community is going to have to sort of get used to this. The vast majority of developments in our community under provincial regulation aren't allowed to have minimum parking standards at all anymore. And so we're going to have to more actively manage the curbside space where there is conflict and again, make the best use out of that limited public space that we can. But for this, I believe they've met the requirements of the permit. I'm supportive of the staff position on the matter and will vote accordingly. Seconder was Councillor Pope.
Yeah, thanks very much. I don't really have much further to add to it. I think the proposal is sound. I'm hearing the concerns about traffic and parking. However, I feel that the overriding issue here is the need in the community for affordable housing, and not just for those with a low income, but also middle-class families working full-time who can't afford to rent here. And right now in the district, rents for one-bedroom units range from $2,500 and up, and three-bedroom units can go for more than $5,000 a month. So I look forward to seeing this project move forward as quickly as possible so we can accommodate more people with affordable housing in North Vancouver. And so I will be supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Mo.
8:30. Couple more hours, right? Okay. For me, this is the second tough decision tonight. Everyone, I think most people know my background with BC Housing, and it's kind of in my DNA to support housing, but there's some things I have some questions. If I may, zoning dealt with certain issues such as traffic, I believe. And then you mentioned earlier that at a DP stage, we cannot talk about massing, but I thought at a DP stage, we talk about forming character. Is massing not part of forming character?
I'm more or less, well, I'll look to Mr. Milberg.
Your worship, massing commonly refers to height and setbacks. Those are set in the zoning bylaw. And the applicant is not asking to vary those standards that were set by council in 2023. There are other more general guidelines and that are referred to and achieved in the permit before you. Staff have put quite a bit of effort working with the applicant, try to make or bring forward a proposal that is consistent with those guidelines. And the applicant has been responsive to the various comments and concerns that we've heard in terms of the aesthetic of the building, its integration on the site, and how it relates to adjacent properties. Thank you.
Okay. I do want to thank the staff for this report. And I recognize that during, after considering input from the public, the staff or the applicant did increase the number of parking stalls, total parking stalls from 107 to 131. And I believe the report indicates that 131, that number is the maximum number of stalls on one level of underground parking. Okay. Is the number of parking stalls something that can be considered during the issuance of a DP?
Mr. Milberg?
Your worship, the standards for parking are set in zoning. I don't believe we have guidelines that specify the number of parking spaces. So there is no guideline which council can refer to deny a development permit in terms of parking numbers.
Sorry, could the opposite be true as well? If it's not specified, then how do you approve it?
Yeah, so what we do is we verify zoning bylaw compliance before issuing the permit. So staff do that as a technical issue. It's much like in the way that we review BC building code to ensure that the building complies with the code before we issue approvals. There are standards. If the standards are met, then the permit is issued.
So what are the standards in this case, if I can?
Am I on?
Now you are. There you go.
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Ma. In this case, the district's alternative vehicle parking rates policy was used by staff to evaluate the parking rates proposed for this project.
So if I may ask, what is the parking ratio that is the target or the guideline?
The AVPR, the parking rates policy, has a range that there's a base range and it varies depending on strata, rental, or non-market housing. And there are also minimums. The minimum for non-market rental housing is 0.4 parking spaces per unit. This works out to an average overall of 0.62.
Okay, thank you for that. And, from experience, I know that, when there's an application that comes forward, usually there's concerns, about parking and traffic. So I get that. Is there any avenue to look at other factors? For instance, to me, there's some extenuating circumstances here. You got one way to get in and out of this community. Thank you. We have a bit of a concentration potentially in this area because there's also another site that's at the St. Denis site that we haven't really worked on yet. So whatever happens there, traffic's going to be coming through the same. We know that we have a new turf field going in at Inter-River, and that could spur some more activity. One of the things that I'm trying to do, and I hope this council also does, is engage more with the Capilano University. So all these things are going to bring potentially more traffic to the area, but it's not necessarily one of the consideration in our alternate parking guidelines. Is there any avenue to consider these factors?
Mr. Milburn.
Your worship, if council were to pass a motion to defer the development permit consideration tonight and refer the matter to a closed meeting conversation where council could discuss the partnership arrangement with BC Housing, we would have to seek that direction because this would have consequences to our current agreements and current negotiations with BC Housing that we've been operating under in terms of a request for a proposal that was submitted with an operator to achieve funding response from the province. So given all those consequences, staff would recommend that if it was council's intention to not consider the development permit at this time and instead reconsider the parking demand, the parking and traffic demand, so the overall scale of the project, and council wished to reduce the scale of the project or consider other locations, that would be a matter that I would recommend you refer to a closed meeting conversation. And then we would discuss options with council and BC Housing, our partner.
Okay, thank you for that advice. And I'm looking to my council colleague that says, hang on for a second.
I will just add, through your worship, I would just add to that. This site is also within the Capilano University transit-oriented area. So the district doesn't have any power to require vehicle parking. So the vehicle parking is voluntarily provided.
Okay.
Your worship, sorry, can I just clarify? The district owns this property. Yeah. So the district can establish standards through ownership. Now, there is specific powers that we can't apply through zoning, but we can apply through powers through contract. So which is why I was recommending a referral back to a closed meeting conversation. Thank you, worship.
Okay. So this is just one question I need to ask. You know, I read the report. It was a good report. Thank you. That the limit of 131 was based on the maximum on a one level, and I get it. Every level you go down, you know, I'm giving costs between $40,000 and $60,000 for another spot. I get that. I was at a chamber event last week, and there is a company on the North Shore that builds automated or lift parking spots. When staff are looking at the maximum number of parking spots available, did they consider alternate parking systems to achieve a higher number of parking spots?
Stonehawker?
Yeah. I would have to ask the applicant on that one, as they were working with a different development planner at that time.
The reason I bring it up is I'm told that there is an installation of this system at Adena home site. I think it's the Compass building, if I remember correctly. So it wasn't for the whole floor. It was just, I think, 1 or 2 units brought in. So like I said, I support housing. I'm concerned about it fitting into the community, but I think this community is a little unique because there's of all the things I mentioned before. I'm just trying to find that balance. So, you know, if this does not go forward, I'll look at other options. But right now, I am not going to support this, but I do support housing. Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker I have is Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. In both of the reports that were brought forward to council and to the public hearing, there was a unit number of between 100 and 180. How did we arrive at 188?
I may start and just let staff continue to answer. The report, I'm just reading the report, just quoting it. It says in the order of 100 to 180 spaces. So in order means approximate. There was a specific density, though, that was approved by council. I believe it's 1.75 FSR. I believe this application has submitted is 1.59 FSR. So they actually propose a significant reduction in terms of the FSR based on what they feel they could fit onto the site in terms of parking need, numbers of units, and so on. So the number was given in the 100 to 180. That's a big range, and it was described as in the order of. And when we spoke with BC Housing, their goal was really to try to maximize the potential utility of the site, to try to achieve affordability objectives that council identified as similar objectives. And again, the application is well below the density that council permitted at the time in 2023.
Well, not according to all of the reports that were presented to council, because the unit number was between 100 and 180, and we're looking at 188. I think this process is flawed. And you warn at the beginning of this meeting, Mayor Little, with respect, that we cannot reject a development permit unless we have good reasons. But we haven't seen the reasons for any of this until tonight, because at the public hearing, in the staff report, they advised there were no detailed drawings or details of any part of this application, because we were simply pre-zoning the site. And then now we are faced and put into a corner in regards to making a decision. And the information was not available except for some pictures that were clipped to the report at the public hearing. And now we are dealing with the issues of access, parking, and the site access of an underground parking lot, which is at a blind hill, and the access into the turnaround at the top of the hill, which is at a blind crest. So how can council make a reasonable decision when at the public hearing we had no details?
Be clear, Councillor. Every single project that is compliant with the zoning would have this same standard and approach to it. I understand that it is a new building, but if it complies with the zoning, then you don't have that additional discussion about changes and variances to the zoning and the types of uses on the space. So just to be clear, Mr. Bilburn is quite correct that they could have proposed up to 1.75 FSR, and we still would not be able to refuse it on density grounds, because that's what's permitted under the zoning today.
But Mayor Little, tomorrow night, we're going to hear an application from Polygon at a public hearing, and all of the drawings are included in the public hearing.
Both as rezoning and an OCP amendment on that project.
It doesn't matter, Mayor Little.
Legally, it does.
Okay, my point is that the community and council is faced with making a decision with zero details. I went to the public meeting. I was standing and speaking to the project team. I spoke to the architects who said this project is challenging. The only way we could fit in these two access points for vehicular traffic into the underground and to the top of the crest is because the site is sloped on three sides, and it's very dense to try to fit this many units into this 6-story building. So, you know, we weren't given the details of how this property was going to operate at the public hearing because there were none. And now we are facing these challenges. We have no transportation plan in this area. We have added student housing at Cap U, the Darwin project on Monashee. We have added an artificial turf field in Inter River. We have closed an access point because of the Mountain Highway interchange. And all we're doing is adding increased density and removing transportation opportunities. I have asked multiple times in multiple discussions over the years to determine a transportation design for that area, and nothing comes forward ever. Nothing has come forward. We have closed an access point, and there's been no studies, no information in regards to how one area is able to access their homes one way, with now 2 blind corners to access 188 units and parking that is insufficient. That area in Inter River, every street is filled with cars. Every street. All the townhouses above this property, they are parked on the side streets because all their kids live at home and they all have cars. If there's a backup on the Second Narrows Bridge, it's not, can I get out of my neighborhood? It is, can I get out of my driveway? Because people are backed up within the complexes trying to get out. You know, it is not reasonable to divide a community by making a decision that benefits one group. And I will say at the public hearing, the vast majority of people that were at that hearing, I'll take my second 2 minutes. The vast majority at the public hearing did not oppose social housing. But I do not think it's reasonable to impact one group and then negatively impact another group. And we seem to continue to go down this path where it's either this way or that way and nothing in the middle. What would this have looked like? And would there have been the same issues if there was 120 units? You know, if we had looked at this slightly differently, but we didn't. Council was asked to give a range of between 100 and 180. Tomorrow night, I'm not being asked by a private developer for me to approve a range of units so they can figure out what's going to work for them. We have a finite number that we are going to be told tomorrow. This one, we were given a range, and of course, the maximum, in fact, beyond the maximum range, has been applied to this development. So I think that there's a lot of flaws in the process. It is not giving a reasonable opportunity for the community to understand exactly what they are supposed to consider, or at least even give feedback on. Council is not being given the information on what the project even looks like, just some varied ideas of what it could look like with a very large range of unit numbers. If it was about affordability and how the project was going to be feasible, then why did we even start at 100? Why didn't we just say, in order for this project to be feasible, it has to be 188? And then maybe there would have been a different conversation. I don't accept that if we're going to say we want to communicate with the community, that we're just going to give them vagueness and hope that they figure it out, and in hopes that we are going to come up with something that's reasonable, because this currently, I don't believe is reasonable. Especially since we don't have any solutions to any of the traffic issues that are being created by any of these other problems that we're going to have in this area. So for that reason, Mayor Little, I'm going to move deferral of this back to staff in an in-camera meeting and council to discuss.
To be clear, just want to check with the clerk. So that is a motion to defer. And so I'll have to seek a seconder. And then is there still debate on it, or does that automatically defer the item immediately?
Thank you, through your worship. You will require a seconder, and it is debatable on the merits of deferral only, not on the matter itself, just on the merits of deferral.
Okay, Councillor Ma, you're seconding the motion. Okay, so council, we now have a debate on deferral of the matter, which would be, I think, if Councillor Muri's intent is followed, that it would be referred back to a workshop of council, or sorry, a meeting with council in camera, as Mr. Milburn had identified, because it would have to do with our partial ownership of the site. Is that correct, Mr. Milburn?
That's correct, Your Worship. Both partial ownership as well as partnership agreement with the province of British Columbia, BC Housing.
On deferral, council, you moved it, Councillor Muri. Do you have discussion on deferral?
So I think that there is a reasonable expectation that the community is going to have not experience any further negative impact to how they circulate in that community. This is about form and character, absolutely. And it is because of the density that sits within these two buildings. According to the project team that was at the public meeting at the Holiday Inn, they expressed that it was a difficult site because of the slopes, and there was only 2 ways that they were going to be able to deal with this access. I think council needs to understand the impacts of that access. I think council needs to understand that there is currently 0 availability on the street. If you go down to the Holiday Inn in Inter River at 4 or 5 in the afternoon, every single road in that area is filled with cars. There is no, and Lillooet Road has no parking on either side except the north side on the west side, and that is usually taken up mainly by Cap University students. In fact, even our own district park at Inter River is used by Cap University students to park, to avoid parking, paid parking in Inter River or at the university. So we have a huge issue in regards to circulation, and you know, I support the concept of social housing, but I don't support it when it's going to be negatively impacting an area with no solutions in regards to engineering, traffic, anything other than to extend a left-hand turn lane. And we put some delineators in so people that are getting stuck in bridge traffic don't do U-turns at the intersections, because they've been doing that for years. This is a raised slope with a significant downhill grade towards the Holiday Inn. And it's a curve and it's fast. And you cannot see, you are blind when you are coming out of Old Lillooet Road, and you cannot see the traffic coming up from the Holiday Inn. So I just think that this is not appropriate. This density is not appropriate. And I think council should have been given the opportunity to understand the impacts of this development prior to the decision on the zoning and prior to the decision of bringing it forward to a development permit, where we are being, you know, we're put into this corner where we have to have very good reasons. But we had no reasons to even consider from the public hearing until Tuesday of last week, which I think is absolutely unacceptable, and it's an unacceptable public process.
Councillor Ma?
Councillor Murray raises a lot of concerns, valid concerns I share. We're all trying to advocate for more housing for people in the district. We need that. And as mentioned, the people I've talked to and the emails I've received, no one's against social housing. There is a concentration in this area that I'm concerned about, but there's some very unique characteristics to this area and site. I think council has a bigger vision for this area, but I'm not sure if it's captured in applying the guidelines that we have to this one site. This site is part of a bigger community, and there's a lot of things that are happening, and I want to make sure that we give those consideration fair value. And do we need more parking? Yeah, 188. Okay, that seems to be a lot, but I think it's manageable. But the biggest challenge for me is if we don't provide enough parking for the residents there, it's going to spill out on the street, and it's going to cause a lot more challenges that I'm not sure there's a solution at that point. And Mayor Little, I remember you saying this before when we've had other projects come forward, if I remember correctly, that if we don't build it when the building goes up, you won't have it later. And we won't have that flexibility in the future, like for storage space or for EV charging. Like, we have to think further ahead. I fully recognize that the staff did their job and, applied the guidelines that are in place, but maybe those guidelines need to be revisited for this site. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so my comments on the matter. I mean, I think this presupposes that the majority of the council that voted for the project did so in error or misunderstanding what was on the table at the time, because none of the issues that have been brought forward have a bearing on the issuance of a development permit. I fully acknowledged in my comments, there's parking challenges in this area, and we probably need to address the curb space, and I would be supportive of us reviewing that. But I don't know that that's a valid reason to reject a development permit. Having said that, we're unlikely to get sued because we're the applicant in the process. But if we weren't the applicant in the process, what we're doing right now would be wrong. Okay, and so I have a problem with that. I don't think a majority of council that made the decision was confused about the matter. I think that the majority of council understood the conditions under which we were partnering with BC Housing for the site, including when they asked for us to identify sites, and we identified this site as having potential. When they came back and wanted to propose a potential building for the site in partnership with us, proposed a zoning for our consideration, proposed a density for our consideration. I don't think there was any confusion on the part of the council for that. Yes, I'll acknowledge that when they came out, their recommendation was to come out above the range of unit counts. And again, unit count is not density. Density is the floor space ratio in our system. That I was a bit surprised by how many units they were putting into the space. But with smaller units, with the number of the rapid decline in the number of people per household that we're seeing in the District of North Vancouver, units are not always going to mean the straight up calculation we used to have, which was about 2.3 people per unit. I think that's significantly lower now, particularly when you start talking about these facilities. So I have to come to the conclusion that I don't think the council was confused about what decision they had to make at the time, and they made it. The zoning is in place. And so only reasons that have to do with the development permit, do we not think they've met the technical standards? Do we not think they've gone through all of the process? Clearly, staff have said they have. And so I don't find them to be reasonable grounds to deny a development permit, even though we're the applicant. So I'm not going to be supporting referral of this matter at this time. Councillor Hanson.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. My comments are much along your lines. We're dealing with a development permit. This is not a rezoning. The rezoning has come and gone. The matter went through 3 readings, including a public hearing. We're talking about 188 units of affordable rental housing with funding coming from BC Housing. This complies with zoning. There are no variances, and I will not be supporting referral.
Thank you. Councillor Back.
Yes, thank you. I will also not be supporting deferring this. It has gone through a public process, and as a taxpayer, we're using district-owned land, and as a taxpayer, I'd want to see that we get the most public benefit out of it, which I believe we are achieving with 188 affordable rental units. These are people and families that we want living here in our community, and I think every development can come down to traffic issues, as they so often do. And we acknowledge, as the mayor has said, that there will be some pressure on streets in this area, and we will have to use other tools to address those. But I want to say that this is a development that I'm very proud of to see it move forward, and not one that I want to add any delay to, which is something that we criticize other levels of government about sometimes. And this would be adding our own delay in getting actual homes built for real people. So I won't be supporting that. Thank you.
Thank you. To be clear, at an amendment, there's only one speaking opportunity, and it's 1 4-minute, and both councillors Ma and Murray have already had that, and so have I, and so have councillors over here as well. So Councillor Forbes, there you go. Yes, Councillor Forbes, you can speak to the amendment, to the deferral.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm in favor of this amount of rental coming in. What I'm concerned about, and maybe you could tell me if this can be dealt with if the development permit passes. What I'm concerned about is the access in and out. That road is steep, it's winding, and you have to, what happens if there's a backup there? You're going to back it. It reminds me of Mountain Highway in a sense, that you're going to have limited space, 1 lane traffic down, 1 lane traffic up, and then the lane going up, maybe trying to make a turn into the development, or one coming down could be trying to make a turn into the development and then cross a lane of traffic to get in there. Is there going to be an opportunity to look at this traffic management in this area? I understand the whole parking issue, but is there going to be an opportunity to look at traffic
response from Mr. Fox? Yeah, Mr. Fox. Oh.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, staff are fully prepared to discuss pedestrian and vehicular access, so the access points on the property, why they're in the location. I heard a statement earlier tonight, they are blind, that they cannot be seen. Staff would be happy to respond to that question and identify how it's safe. We have both staff from our transportation team as well as the planning staff who have worked with the applicant's consultant to ensure that the pedestrian and vehicular access points are safe. And then also there was a statement made about certain improvements that were proposed by the applicant in the adjacent streets, and we'd be happy to respond to questions related to those proposed improvements.
We do have engineering here as well. I don't know if you want to make any comment about when we last had a plan or an update in that area, or what the process would be to review both the curbside management and the circulation in that neighborhood.
Yeah, through the mayor. So I don't have at hand the exact time we last did a neighborhood plan of this area. Staff can certainly take that away and report back as a common theme from this evening. What I can share is that, as staff have shared with council previously, we are going through our curbside management policy and updating that through our community transportation plan. So elements of that could be considered for this particular neighborhood. For the particular site itself, I know there's been a lot of discussion. So in terms of the 188 dwelling units that are identified during the peak hour, we estimate probably around 70 vehicle movements would be happening. So when you look at the Lillooet intersection, that's probably 1, maybe 2 vehicles per cycle. So from a specific development point of view, we do not expect that the development would materially impact the overall network operation, but we do acknowledge that there are some existing traffic concerns in the area.
Councillor Forbes, on referability, please.
Pardon me?
You really are only supposed to be commenting on whether you're referring it back to the meeting or
Nobody else. I'm trying to find out, though, if this is something that is still open, would be open in the deferred discussion, or is it already mandated and it's simply going to be explained, which is the way I'm understanding what Mr. Milburn has said. They're willing to explain why they've done what they've done, but that doesn't answer. Are they open to discussing it and maybe having changes?
And the question I'm trying to assess, is that a legitimate reason for holding up the development permit at the time? And I don't believe it's one of the things we're allowed to consider for holding up the development permit. We can proceed with reviewing traffic regulations in the area at any time, unrelated to the development permit. And so I think it would be unusual, we'll at least say, to refer the matter back to hear something that actually can't be used to determine whether you would support a development permit or not in the site. So probably best, I would suggest, to have our staff come back and report back on circulation and curb space management in the area, whether or not this goes ahead.
Did our CAO, Mr. Fox, want to say anything?
Mr. Fox? I think it's. There we go. There you go.
Yeah, awesome. Through the chair, no, I didn't. I just wanted to make sure that council was aware that engineering has looked at the site and that staff had looked at the site, because there were some comments that were talking about the congestion, the sight lines, etc., from the site itself. And engineering has been involved in that, and it has been addressed through the application.
Okay. No further comments? Prepared to call the question on whether the matter is referred. I may have gotten it wrong. Deferred or referred in this situation? It's a referred. Right?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's referral to a closed
Referral,
meeting.
not deferral. Okay. And so it's been moved and seconded to refer. Call a question. All in favor of referral? All those opposed? The matter is defeated with councillors Back, Pope, Hanson, Forbes, and Mayor Little opposed. Okay. And so back onto the regular motion. At this time, did we have any other speakers on the original? You still have additional 2 minutes, is that correct? We're just going to check in.
It is correct.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Councillor Ma, second time speaker. Go ahead.
I was told not to always set the record straight, but in this case, I'm going to set the record straight. I'm not confused. We just didn't have enough information in the first time. I went on. Sorry, my time, please.
Sorry, I didn't suggest you were confused, Councillor Ma.
We didn't have full information at that time. We took a leap of faith. 100 to 180 units is a big range. I'm not going to make a big deal out of additional 8 units. I accept Mr. Milburn's comments, but at times our parking is tied to the number of units, not FSR. So there's a little inconsistency at times. I'm not asking for a reduction in the number of units. I'm concerned about the concentration, but I voted in favor of the original rezoning to between 100 and 180. So I'll stand by that. I also want final point. I also want other levels of government to pay for housing and needed infrastructure in the district, so we can keep taxes low for our residents. But we need to be careful when we do that. When other levels of government provide funding, they usually have strings attached. And there's a project that's close by there that has been controversial, but we can't make any changes because it's either take it or we'll go somewhere else with our funding. So yes, we work in partnership with BC Housing, and I would say that I know how the system works there, and they're good partners, but we need to protect the interests of our residents. That's my main concern now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Okay, prepared to call the question on issuance of the permit. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried with Councillors Ma and Murray opposed. Thank you, Council. Council, we normally have a bit of a break or a stretch at 9 o'clock, and I think we've gone through such heady issues tonight. I think that's probably a good idea. So I'm recommending a 5-minute recess, and then we'll come back and deal with the remaining 3 items at that time. So 5-minute recess, and we'll come back. That's okay. I'll get through that. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to reconvene the meeting. Next item up for consideration is item 8.7, pilot project update for Edgemont Boulevard and Highlands Boulevard. And I do believe we have a very quick presentation from staff on this.
8.6.
Oh, did I skip 8.6? Oh, hang on. Hang on, I was reading further in my package at the time we broke. All right. Item 8.6, small scale multi-unit housing and Bill 25 implementation. Probably more than 30 seconds. Mr. Smith.
Your worship, if I may.
Mr. Milburn.
Thank you. Just some very brief introductory comments. Then with your indulgence, I'd like to pass it off to Mr. Jason Smith, who will provide an overview of presentation. So just to reiterate some of the information you have in tonight's package, this item is returning for council consideration. It is being brought on because of Bill 25 legislation, which Mr. Smith will discuss. The small scale multi-unit housing, or SSMUH, SMUH, some people refer to it as in provincial meetings. These are densities required by provincial legislation that are not consistent with the district's official community plan, in which the official community plan focuses growth 75 to 90% of new housing units in the 4 key growth centers. Nor are the SMUH densities consistent with general good planning practice to locate new density in areas close to infrastructure, services, and amenities, although staff and council have supported targeted infill in appropriate locations in our community. Furthermore, the administrative and financial burden on the district is anticipated to be greater for SMUH development on a per unit basis when compared to the higher density forms of development already planned for in the key growth centers and the corridors connecting them. Despite these concerns, staff recommend that the district's bylaws be amended to align with these new requirements of the provincial legislation, which are to come into place by June 30th of this year. However, staff also recommend that the district's financial strategies, related bylaws to be updated if SMUH is approved to ensure that anticipated additional costs incurred by the district are recovered from SMUH developers. Thank you, Worship. Happy to pass the remainder of the proposal presentation off to Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. It's a pleasure to be here in front of you tonight to discuss small-scale multi-unit housing and Bill 25 implementation timing. Throughout the presentation, I'll refer to it as SSMUH because it's just a bit easier to come off the tongue. As Mr. Milburn mentioned, Bill 25 has driven the issue of small-scale multi-unit housing in the district again. Council and the community first addressed this through the requirements of Bill 44, which was introduced in the latter part of 2023. And in June of 2024, this council complied with the legislation at the time by, in essence, rezoning the vast majority of single-family homes to allow for a laneway house. In response or in reaction to that, to some extent, the province did introduce in October of this year and passed in December, Bill 25, which changed the rules and now is requiring the vast majority of single-family homes to require 4 units in the district, and in some areas, particularly around Lynn Valley Road and Marine Drive, 6 units where it's close to frequent transit. And those specifics are outlined in map 3 or attachment 3, which is a map of the how SSMUH would be implemented in the district. In response to Bill 25, there's been several reports to council and various discussions that have taken place in response to this legislation, including an overview of Bill 25 in October, a 2-day workshop discussing proposed approach to SSMUH implementation, some follow-up reports in March addressing some of those issues. Attachment 1 also provides additional responses in terms of additional renderings, some questions around maximum buildable floor area, and other questions that arose out of those workshops in February. That's there as well. Another request was also to see a draft zone, which is attachment 2 to the report as well. So trying to provide as much information as possible as we move forward. Also in January, there was direction provided by council in response to a council or staff presentation to run small-scale multi-unit housing in conjunction with the zoning bylaw rewrite, as they were kind of complementary projects and would kind of be more efficient in terms of moving forward. As Mr. Milburn alluded to, it's not simply changing the zoning to allow 4 to 6 units. The implementation questions and the challenges that SSMUH does present to the district also need to be addressed in a more fulsome and wholesale way through additional conversations around servicing. So such as what will be the boulevard requirements, the sidewalk treatments, and other infrastructure requirements that we would want to expect as that development moves forward and is introduced into various neighborhoods in the district. In conjunction with that, a financial strategy around how to appropriately pay and who should pay for that also needs to be addressed. And that is something, if council chooses to move forward with the implementation of SSMUH, that staff will be bringing forward. So before council tonight are 2 options on how they can choose to direct the next steps for SSMUH. Option 1 would see SSMUH advancing towards implementation, running in conjunction with the zoning bylaw rewrite, and should that project not proceed as planned, the alternative plans are in place. The current projection for the work plan for SSMUH would see kind of bylaws being introduced towards the end of May, additional readings and a public hearing in June, and July adoption. That does not meet the legislated deadline, but as is outlined in the report and also in attachment 4, which outlines the local government transition powers for the province, this is minimal legal risk as long as we have it adopted by the end of July before the summer break, there should be no legal risk of adopting SSMUH on that timeline. And this would allow further time for staff to take the necessary work to get most of the implementation pieces in place for council's consideration and direction. Another potential option is to not proceed with SSMUH. And this would be a decision of council should they choose to do that. There is a risk should council choose to proceed with that direction, that the province, as again is outlined in the report and in the legislation as attachment 4, that the province has given itself the powers to require and in fact impose SMUH through orders, and it can amend the zoning bylaw themselves. So that is a risk should council choose to move forward with that option. As Mr. Milburn alluded to, staff's recommendation is that we do proceed with the implementation of SMUH in the district and undertake the necessary regulatory amendments to ensure that we best can accommodate and tailor SMUH development to the needs and unique circumstances of the district. And with that, I will conclude my report, and staff are available for any questions that council may have. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Just wanted to make one comment. This report and presentation was prepared before the last zoning bylaw workshop. At that workshop, council discussed wishing to consider extending these overall zoning bylaw rewrite conversation. And so staff are bringing forward a report in April 27th, to seek council's direction about the timeline for the overall zoning bylaw review. So essentially what that means is we could detach these two conversations if that's council's direction. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll be putting option 2 on the floor, which is to not proceed with the implementation of SMUH and Bill 25. Seconded. I am very frustrated with this provincial government's approach. And I need to call it out like it is, which is the direction to municipalities is choose to do what we want or we'll force you to. And I find that to be a terrible relationship with municipalities. Had they wanted to consult with us in this process, they could have. In fact, we were literally at the Minister of Housing, Christine Boyle's office, having discussion about housing policy as all the Union of BC municipality representatives were in Victoria, and they could have talked to the municipalities very easily. We were all in town. We were all meeting with them. Instead, they chose to hold off on the Bill 25 legislation till 1 week after all of the mayors and councils left Victoria. That's how insecure this government is about this discussion. Furthermore, they've actually written into the legislation that in implementing SMUH, you cannot have a public hearing. Now, in other cases, they have said that a public hearing delays things. A public hearing, it's just extra red tape. This one, the implementation is June no matter what. Having a public hearing before that time, you could have had it. It wouldn't have caused any other additional delay in implementation. Instead, it was they actually took the time to write into the legislation that they did not want to hear from the public about this piece of legislation. And I find that to be reprehensible. I find that to be a terrible relationship with your municipalities, and have expressed it on many occasions. I don't know what else I can add to what I've already said about this situation. I have no problem with us in a planning process targeting areas for SMUH where it makes sense. Supporting a town center on a transit corridor when we have those kinds of discussions. But simply to dispense with town center planning principles and just say development everywhere, I find that to be irresponsible. For decades, the development community was coming to us, the planning community was coming to us and saying you need to build town center redevelopment in order to be able to get critical mass for transit, in order to be able to update your infrastructure. And we got on board, produced 4 town centers, and have been very successful at producing mixed tenure types, mixed affordability levels within those spaces, and all properly supported by services. And so to instead have the provincial government come and dictate to us without proper consultation, in fact, they said they consulted with us, and the Union of BC Municipalities came out against them saying you had not consulted with us. You just told us the day before that you were making these changes. I find it to be very disrespectful to municipalities. I'm going to go into one other angle here. We have lobbying regulations in the federal government, and we have lobbying regulations in the provincial government. But in the municipal world, we don't really have the same kind of level of lobbying regulations. But if you did, the whole purpose of it at the provincial level was to make sure that when somebody with an acute conflict of interest, like a developer in some cases, goes to talk to the government, we know what they talked about. We know what advice the government took from that conflicted party and what parts they dismissed. And so you daylight the process and you say, this lobbying group wanted to talk to the government, this was the subject, this is what they talked about, and this is the result of it. Instead, this government decided to make the lobbyists, and there is no more conflicted party than the development industry through the Urban Development Institute. They are the largest land developers in the area. They decided to make them stakeholders in the process so they could meet with them privately. And we asked the question, why did you meet privately? Well, because there's land speculation at stake. You brought the most conflicted land speculators into the room with you. And so I find this entire process to be completely acceptable. It doesn't meet our standards for government. And I'm so frustrated by it. No, I will not support implementing this as a policy at the District of North Vancouver. No, I won't support implementing Bill 25 in our community. Yes, I did support going to a third dwelling unit because I thought there was a good argument for making more flexibility on our housing spaces. But to then go to 4 without the additional infrastructure dollars coming in, to then go to 5 and 6 in places where a radius was thrown down, not actually a direct connection to how much transit support there is for that neighborhood, just a simple nonsensical radius was drawn. And so you have places like Pemberton Heights that don't have direct access to frequent transit spaces, but they get caught up in the marine drives, even though there's a huge escarpment that you can't walk down through that area. And so you actually don't have direct access to it. So you're going to see potentially 6 dwelling unit places up on the escarpment, even though you can't get to transit. The same thing for the TOA areas on the eastern side of the municipality. The radius for Capilano University actually crosses over the other side of Riverside and the other side of the Seymour River. And the places down the escarpment or on the other side of the river don't actually have access to frequent rapid transit. And yet they're captured in the policy. And so minimum 12 stories in areas that don't have transit access. I find it to be just irresponsible community planning. I can get on board for density. Almost every single dense building in the District of North Vancouver built in the last 20 years, I've voted in support of it. And here I am pushing back and saying that this development, this plan, this approach makes no sense. And I stand by that. I can't, in good conscience, vote for this policy because I don't believe it is in the best interest of the municipality. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I completely agree. I've never seen a provincial government have so much disdain for consultation and communication with the very people they profess to represent. We've watched this in the US. We've watched where a dictator comes in and makes decisions because this person thinks that he has the answers to everything. And we see what's happening around the world in other countries. And now it's beginning to happen in our little province where it's hard for me to call him the premier because I expect more from a leader that's being put in that position. He's having battles with First Nations right now and implementing pieces of legislation without understanding the implications to them because he doesn't want to listen to anybody but himself. He's not listening to the community. He's not listening to the lawyers. He's not listening to the community that has spent years collectively with professionals and residents planning our community. And now he's been convinced that if we just lay blanket legislation down, we're going to solve all of our problems. Well, we saw what happened with housing prices when we, as a municipality, allowed no restrictions on rentals in high rises. What happened? People bought multiple units and rented them out for $450 a night on Airbnb. When the immigration doors opened and we didn't have the infrastructure to support the people that were coming in, like hospitals and doctors and nurses. And then when we add so much density without understanding how we're going to pay for sewage treatment plants and water plants and bridges, because there's this idealistic idea that if you build density, everybody's going to ride a bike. And they're going to get on transit. And yes, they are getting on transit. But you know what? We don't have enough buses because we don't have any money, because everything's not costing tens of millions or hundreds of millions. It's costing billions. If people think that somehow this plan by the provincial government is going to somehow save us, it's going to bury us. Staff presented tonight a couple of things, implementation pieces that we need to consider going forward if this is passed. Our community and zoning bylaws, there's so much work we need to do on that. Development servicing, waterworks regulation, sewer bylaws, and DCCs and ACCs a financial strategy. How is the infrastructure going to be paid for? We had multiple residents come forward tonight. We've had multiple letters about trying to build a coach house because of all the layers of bureaucracy and fees and additions to requirements. And that's why it's costing so much money. And they can't even build a little coach house. A coach house is $850,000. We've had contractors make statements. These units are going to be $1 million each to build, and they're all speculative and they are stratified. So great, let's just go back to stratification. Let's just go back to land speculation when the mayor of Vancouver invited the world to the Olympics, and everything blew up, and affordability went in the toilet. I'll take my other 2 minutes. And now what are we faced with right now? Tens of thousands of condos that are coming online, development companies going bankrupt, because we overbuilt, because we got sucked into the vortex, and now we're paying the piper, and we're going to be paying for a long time. This is going to create chaos, and I hope that none of these 4-plexes or 6-plexes land on anybody's street or next door to them, because you are going to be amazed at what the province wants to allow. And currently, I understand, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but our setbacks and our existing requirements will still have some implication until all of that is removed as well. And front yards will be removed. There's going to be no parking that's required. We, as a municipality and as a regional government, have to understand how many units we're going to have to service with utilities, water, pipes, sewage, all of that. There's no plan to that. There's no costing. There's no understanding how it's going to be paid for. Right now, we can barely pay for a sewage treatment plant. And that's for existing residents, and it's a regulatory requirement. It's not because of increase in population. It is absolutely based on regulation by the federal government. So we're already hurting because of that. And we think somehow densifying sprawl, which the planning community used to push back against because it wasn't supportable, it wasn't sustainable. But that's what this is, densifying sprawl, making it further to service, costs more money. And for all of those reasons and so many more, apart from the fact that I don't like being told what to do as a councillor in this municipality. And we have our role to play in these 3 levels of government. And I think it's a critically important role. And we are directly answering to the people. And unlike the provincial government, who answers to no one but themselves.
Thank you. Councillor Back.
All right, let everyone just take a deep breath. With respect to my colleagues, I'm going to take a little bit of a different position. I will start by saying that I do see the value in small scale multi-unit housing. Allowing duplexes, triplexes, multiplexes in more neighborhoods does introduce some more flexibility into our housing system. Creates a range of housing for a mix of households, whether it's families, downsizers, or as we've seen is so often the case, that intergenerational living. It has the potential to help deliver what's referred to as missing middle housing, forms of housing between the single family home and the larger condo buildings that have largely been absent from many of our neighborhoods. And I'll just say that anecdotally, I do hear quite often people asking, why don't we see more duplexes in the district? And the reality is because up until now, we really haven't allowed them in most areas. So this is a meaningful shift in that regard. On the topic of multiplexes, what we're seeing more broadly, not just here, but across Canada, is that when you allow more homes on a single lot, people do respond, but it's not in a sudden transformative way. It's gradual, it's incremental, and it tends to show up first as perhaps duplexes, suites, and then small multiplexes. And so I think it's also important to recognize the context that we're in. The province has set a clear direction here. And this is the staff recommendation. I don't think it's productive for us to position ourselves in direct opposition to that direction. I think our role, in my view, is to implement this in a way that works well for our community. At the same time, I think it's important to be realistic about what this will actually do. It's not about towers in neighborhoods. It's about creating more options, especially ground-oriented, family-sized homes within the community that we already have. But if we're expecting this to solve affordability overnight, that won't happen either. It's one tool. But I think it does, over time, move us in the direction of increasing supply and choice of housing. But as has been said, and I think it's important to acknowledge, this represents a shift in how we think about growth. Traditionally, we have focused on concentrating growth in town centers and along corridors where it can align closely with transit services and infrastructure. And this does introduce a more distributed model of growth, which where change can happen incrementally across many neighborhoods. I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing, but it's a different way of planning, and it's something we will need to manage carefully. And that's the thing that gives me some comfort, is that because the uptake will be incremental, we will have time to learn as we go. We'll be able to see where this type of housing is actually being taken up, where it makes sense and where it's viable, and that will give us the ability to respond in a more targeted way. That said, we also need to be clear about the implications of this approach. If we're enabling more distributed growth across neighborhoods, there is corresponding need for infrastructure investments and services to support that growth. And that's not something that municipalities can carry alone. So if this is the direction being set at the provincial level, then we need to continue to have real conversations with the province about how municipalities are supported in delivering the infrastructure that goes along with it, whether that's utilities, transportation, or community amenities. Because enabling housing without ensuring the supporting infrastructure in place is obviously not a sustainable approach over the long term. From our perspective, that also means being proactive. I don't think we need to wait to monitor this after the fact. We should be tracking the uptake of this type of housing and the outcomes from day one. We should also be focused on getting the form right, and I will take an additional 2 minutes if I can. Good design, tree retention, and making sure these homes fit well within existing neighborhoods, that shouldn't change. There's an opportunity here to make it easier to deliver this type of housing. Things like pre-approved or standardized design options, and this was something that we talked about when this topic was recently discussed. This can help streamline the process, reduce the costs, and give homeowners and builders more clarity. We're already hearing from residents, as we have heard from tonight and over the last few days, who want to build this type of housing, but are finding that the process, the cost, and the requirements that we control now are making it very difficult to move forward. In some cases, those additional requirements are increasing project costs to the point where projects simply don't proceed at all, as we also heard tonight. And that really underscores, in my opinion, the importance of not just allowing this type of housing, but making sure it's actually feasible to deliver, and that our requirements are appropriately scaled to the size of the projects. And the communities that are seeing the most success with this approach aren't just changing zoning. They're making it easier to build with clear rules and more efficient approvals and tools like that that support good outcomes. So for me, this is about putting the framework in place, recognizing the direction that's been set, and committing to implement it thoughtfully. That means being realistic about what we will deliver and attentive to how it will unfold. At the end of the day, it's about making sure that our community remains a place where people can put down roots, where they're just starting out, raising a family, or looking to stay in the neighborhood that they love as they get older. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pope.
Thank you. I am also speaking in support of the staff recommendation to implement small-scale multi-unit housing. I want to acknowledge that there are some real concerns in the community about change, neighborhood character, infrastructure, and what this could look like on the ground. And those concerns are valid, and they deserve to be addressed in thoughtful implementation. But I also believe that we need to ground this discussion in evidence. According to the analysis done by the DNV consultant, small-scale multi-unit housing is not financially attractive or doable for most developers. Land costs on the North Shore are simply too high, and that means the fear that we will suddenly see widespread redevelopment into sixplexes across the district is frankly overstated. This is not about speculative developers flooding our neighborhoods. This is about homeowners who have lived here for years and want a reasonable option to keep their families together, whether that means building a unit for their children or creating a space for themselves to age in place. I've heard this repeatedly over the last 4 years. People want their kids to stay here. They want to downsize without leaving the community. They want multi-generational living, not as a theory, but as a practical reality. And yet our current bylaws make that extremely difficult. We heard from several homeowners tonight that DNV makes even building coach houses too expensive, too complex, and too restrictive to build. SMUH begins to change that. It allows for more flexible, more attainable forms of housing that reflect how people actually want to live today. And this is not just about private homeowners. It also creates real opportunities for nonprofit housing providers. Organizations like the North Shore Disability Society, for example, are trying to expand their capacity within existing neighborhoods to provide housing that is accessible, inclusive, and integrated. Simple changes like adding a second story for caregivers while keeping clients on the main floor are currently constrained by zoning and cost barriers. The same applies to organizations like Hollyburn Community Services, which could expand the supportive housing it offers if given more flexibility. And this is where SMUH has real value. It enables a shift towards smaller scale, home-like housing, particularly for seniors and people needing care, instead of large institutional models. It allows people to remain in their community, close to family, support networks, and services, because the reality is this: if those options don't exist here, people will and are being forced to leave. And for many, especially seniors, that means moving away from the community they've built their lives in. I also want to address the broader context. Bill 25 is not optional. We can choose to work collaboratively with the province to implement this in a way that reflects the unique geography and character of the district, or we can resist and risk losing that flexibility entirely. And I do think there are areas where a more tailored approach is appropriate. For example, neighborhoods like Pemberton Heights present real constraints, particularly around the transit accessibility and topography. And this is where we should be advocating for thoughtful exemptions, but that's not going to happen if we vote against the current housing laws and Bill 25. At the same time, there are clear opportunities, particularly along transit corridors such as Marine Drive, where this type of housing makes sense and aligns with broader planning goals. So it's not about blanket change, it's about targeted, thoughtful implementation. And so supporting this recommendation does not finalize the outcome. It allows staff to bring forward the detailed regulations where design, scale, and fit can be properly addressed. And in my view, that is the responsible path forward. It balances community concerns with the very real need for more flexible, attainable housing options. And it positions the district to shape this change rather than react to it. Thank you.
Councillor Pope. Councillor Ma.
Okay. Okay, I'm 0 for 2 tonight on the big issues. Let's see how this one is. No, I have some real challenges for this one. I understand the challenges of our current housing situation in the district, and I will accept the provincial government's belief that implementing SSMUH will help with increasing supply. However, and I think another councillor talked about the same point, but our own consultant showed that financials for small scale units on a single family lot won't work financially, and it won't result in any more affordability. And if I recall correctly, the forecast is also only about 1% uptake. So we're potentially going through all this exercise for 400 to 500 additional units, give or take. I think there's better ways to encourage supply, such as approving projects with the appropriate parking allowance. And tomorrow night, we're going to hear about another proposal. There's a multi-unit proposal coming forward, and we'll be able to scale up a lot faster. The district has also met the 2024 housing target set by the province, but I admit we missed the target in 2025, but I believe overall we hit 81%. The reason things aren't being built, it's not because of council. I believe it's our current adverse market conditions. And we have to remember, it's not municipalities that build things, it's the developers. Our job is just to approve the proposal and land use. And we also need to work with our developers and the development community to ensure that our fees, our permits, and our processes are reasonable. I'm hearing that we can do a little more work on that. So I would say that most people love the community in which they live. Of course, there's challenges living in a district, but it's a great place. But part of this being a great place is a direct result of the planning done by council and staff. In my humble opinion, allowing SSMUH to go ahead throws all that out the window. And I'm going to quickly touch upon coach houses. When the province first introduced Bill 44, SSMUH, this council instead approved 3 units on a lot, principal residence, secondary suite, and a coach house. I've always been a proponent of coach houses because of the soft density, and I believe that soft density is what this community will support. For the speakers tonight that spoke about the challenges and additional permit costs, I hear you, and I'm going to look into this with you and see what we can do. And recently, I met with people that operate the Intellectual Disability Society, and also at the gala hosted by the North Shore Disability Resource Center, I spoke with parents who have kids that have disabilities and may soon age out. They may age out of housing currently provided by CLBC. I know that many of them are looking to SSMUH as a way to provide them option. I don't want to discourage you if this motion does not pass tonight. I know that council recognizes the need, and I will work with you to try to find a way to address this need by families in our community. I think I'll need the extra time. As Mayor Mike Little mentioned earlier, he's open to approving SSMUH type development in appropriate areas of our district on an individual basis, and I support that. And even though the staff at the beginning said that SSMUH is not good planning practices, I paraphrase, and I appreciate the staff are still recommending we approve this because, you know, staff's role is not to expose the district to any risk. But if this motion doesn't get approved and the timeline is missed, you know, I don't relish the idea of the provincial government stepping in and taking over the approval of housing like they've done in, or potentially will do in some communities close by. The housing minister has set a housing target for us to hit by 2028. I think the number is 2838. And speaking with staff, we have enough applications and approval in the pipeline to achieve that. So I will say to the housing minister that the district is willing to work with the province in providing more housing. We actually have a few projects on the go right now as we speak. So to the housing minister, please respect our process and don't risk ruining our community by forcing us to implement SSMUH. As such, I cannot support this motion to go ahead. Thank you.
Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to spend part of my speaking time agreeing with Mayor Little and Councillor Murray as to the faults and failures of this provincial government. And then I'm going to come to a different conclusion with respect to the mandate to implement SSMUH and implement SSMUH bylaws. Now, first of all, with respect to this provincial government, it has a terrible record in its relationship with local government. It has pursued a very disrespectful line, and that is counterproductive to any goals it could have with respect to housing supply. If its goal was to increase housing supply, it would pursue a collaborative and mutually cooperative relationship with local government, and it hasn't. And I, like Mayor Little, I would be very much open to some kind of SSMUH under our control in certain areas, coordinated according to our community plan. That could make sense. But this slavish adherence to one-size-fits-all type of strategy over housing policy is poor policy, doomed to fail, counterproductive, and not going to generate any good results. Now, I can say as well, this sits along with a pantheon of failures of this particular government. It has fiscal issues, economic issues, problems with DRIPA, which are all in the news today, issues with public services. In fact, the EB government, I believe, can be summed up in the following way. We have record debts, rising taxes, and faltering public services. So, and I can also say that as a New Democrat, I'm, and I'm not alone, looking at this government with a broken heart. However, we, in my view, well, we are a delegated authority of the provincial government. If, in my view, we do not create some kind of SSMUH bylaws, they are very likely to create them for us in an equally disrespectful way that they have interacted with us in every other respect. And because of that, I have very reluctantly come to conclude that our best option, as set out in the staff report, is to create our own SSMUH bylaws. Better to create our SSMUH bylaws than have them created for us by the provincial government. So I will be voting in favor of the staff recommendation.
And to be clear, opposed to the motion that's on the floor. Thank you. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's people around, Councillor and the mayor around this table that have said everything that I would want to say. I am disgusted of our provincial government, how it manhandles its municipality and the people who spend time, years, and come up with plans, and then they just dismiss it. I can't believe that. I actually find it very hard to understand how this government got where it is and why it's doing what it's doing. It's not listening to people. It's not only that it brought the development stakeholders into the meetings, made them stakeholders at meetings, but they also didn't consult with us. And when we try to consult, like you said, Mayor, when we try to consult with them, they're not interested. So they're acting like bullies. That's exactly what they're acting like. And so what do you do when a bully bullies you? Do you give him what he wants? No, he'll come back the next day for your lunch money. So the only thing you can do is stand up for what you think is right. And that's the job of this council, to stand up for our community. And we can meet our housing targets with the three bills on a lot that we passed. But then the province didn't like that. Even though we came up with the numbers and we can continue to meet them. So I just can't go along with the process of what has happened, how this provincial government is doing this. And as Councillor Hanson has said, and you have said, Mayor, I could go along with some schmooze in some specific areas where they would work, but not to just carte blanche and draw circles. It's how does a leader get to a position where all he does is take out a map and draw a circle and doesn't even know what's there? So I can't say it any better than other people around this table have said it, but I don't support this.
Thank you. I believe we've concluded the discussion. I don't see any additional speakers, and I think most of us went largely full time anyway. So the motion on the floor is to option 2, which is to deny the implementation of SMU, and let's put option 2 on there. There you go. The council not proceed with the implementation of SMU. To be clear, I think it also has to mention Bill 25. Does it not? Mr. Milburn? But the original option 2 had both SMU and Bill 25.
It could be amended to include a denial.
That's my intent.
SMU as applied in Bill 25.
For me, seconder, is that Councillor Mary? That's okay.
Yeah, option 2 is
Yeah.
the one we're doing, not the top.
Yeah,
No, why that
shouldn't be there.
I can clarify it. Thank you, through your worship. The recommendation is the staff recommendation. Below it says motion on the floor, option 2. That's the motion that was debated by council.
Okay. So on the motion, sorry, Councillor, just want to check in.
Sorry.
Oh, it's not on the second. Oh, there you go. That's going to be a follow-up question afterwards. Oh. Sorry, this is motion on the floor, option 2. That's the part that's actually on the floor for consideration. Okay. Prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried with Councillors Back, Pope, and Hanson opposed. I did talk to Mr. Milburn earlier, and he recommended that we should indicate with a letter some of our comments and concerns, and I believe you prepared a motion to reflect communicating the decision.
That's correct, Your Worship. We were in our minds thinking if council did support option 2, that it would make sense for council to consider a subsequent follow-up motion to communicate that decision to the provincial government and indicate council's concerns, if any. And we heard many tonight in terms of the issues with implementation of SMUH. I believe we came up with a draft motion that could be shared with council tonight.
This is
while it's being typed, maybe Mr. Smith could read it.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. So the language that we would suggest that council consider is that staff be directed to draft a letter to the province communicating this decision. It was in reference to the choosing not to implement SMUH and Bill 25. Communicating this decision and outlining concerns pertaining to the challenges with servicing, managing hazardous conditions, the appropriate density to support future transit investment, and the importance of the district's current growth model that directs 75 to 90% of growth to our centers.
Use more colorful language, but
You can sign it. And add
helps staff communicate where we're at, then I find that to be satisfactory. So that moved by you, Councillor Murray. I'll second the matter. Can you read it out from this point forward?
I'd be happy to. Pertaining to the challenges with servicing,
nice and slowly read it.
Managing hazardous conditions.
I did not hear any of that in the discussion.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Sorry. You're correct. It was said in the staff comments. You're right. It wasn't the decision. It wasn't the reasons that were presented by the
saying that communicating the decision of council in regard to those issues is actually not correct.
It is. I have followed those issues and we've done that.
They weren't articulated during the 6 minutes that you spoke for.
The last time we've actually spoken about this matter many times, and we have listed all of these at various different times in the process. But let's just get on the floor first.
Managing hazardous conditions, the appropriate density to support future transit investment. And the importance of the district's current growth model that directs 75 to 90% of growth to our centers.
Growth.
70 to 90%. Is it? Yeah,
It is.
Mr. Milburn.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to note, so staff brought up these particular points based on, of course, input we've heard tonight, but also with reference to discussions councils had in former workshops, as well as the former bylaw deliberations. In for example, hazardous areas, the provincial government didn't define what hazardous areas were in Bill 25 and left that to local government to define what were hazardous areas that might impact SMUH density. So we felt it appropriate that if council had those concerns to mention them, because they are things that are delegated to local government to consider. And then in terms of servicing, that has been a matter that has been raised and is matter of record for some years, including the previous Bill 44 conversation. And then the importance of the district's current growth model, I think that speaks for itself. And the final one is the appropriate density to support the future transit investment. This was related to the matter that council debated and gave direction to staff to seek an extension for SMUH because of the potential impacts to future transit investment. So that relates to the BRT. So that's where we came up with this list. We tried to distill council's deliberations to date, not because we assumed we understood all of council's direction, but that we wanted to have it on the table for council debate tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to have this on for discussion, but I think I hear some of the comments of Councillor Pope, and I agree with one aspect, which is that when you write something as a response letter, you say, these are our objections. And then the assumption on the other side is, oh, if I satisfy those objections with a response, then we're all good, right? And the truth is there's some stuff not on the page here that I think I've articulated in various points along the way that I don't think can be satisfied by this. But if this helps at least direct staff's concerns, which were a challenge to convey in the previous process, I'm generally happy to support, but I think since I've had a meeting with the minister just in the last week, I'm sure they understand that my concerns go far beyond this comment.
Given the seconder and the mover ourselves, we could add to the letter that details also the concern of our planning processes, our current OCP, the costs, funding, and the consultation with our community. All of those things. So, it's unusual that sort of at the tail end of a discussion at 20 after 10 at night, we're wordsmithing a letter. So I think maybe I'm going to withdraw my move of this, and unless we have assurances from staff that we're going to add in the other issues that we also have in regards to the process and the blanket approach, and maybe the mayor can oversee it, and then it can be shared with us and sent off.
May I suggest that we don't withdraw the item, that we instead just table it, and we'll bring it back up again at a future council meeting, and we'll work on the wording to make sure it reflects both and distinguishes when it's a staff concern and when it's a council concern. I think that's reasonable and fair. And
the other thing I think that's critical to be added in here is that this was not unanimous, and that in fact was a split decision by council. And I think that's very important as we go forward with our relationship management with the housing minister. Because obviously this is going against the government's wishes, and obviously half the council members do not agree with it. So I don't want her or the government thinking that we're all opposed to this, and these are the reasons why.
Okay. I have no, I mean, I obviously would, in the letters I've done in the past, the letters typically start out by saying a majority of council has decided this or whatever. We definitely can distinguish it between being a unanimous decision of council and being just a majority of council. That's fine. But I think at this point, recognizing the time, I think that we should table this and we'll come back with something that's a little more crafted. I just wanted to get it on the floor to say that this is a discussion we do need to think about, consider how we communicate this out, even though this is all public record as it is. I would support that. So
you need it to be moved to be tabled? Move that we table. Oh, second.
Yeah, it's been moved and seconded, and then it's now tabled.
Yeah, good.
We'll vote on it being.
Okay, we're voting on tabling the motion. All in favor, I'll call the question on tabling. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. The matter is tabled unanimously. Okay. The next item up for discussion is a pilot project update for Edgemont Boulevard. Recognizing that we are 10 minutes from our first time deadline, I will move that we extend the meeting beyond 10:30. It's been seconded by Councillor Murray. Call the question on extending the meeting beyond 10:30. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Again, just to remind people, our policy is that it requires unanimous consent to extend beyond 11 o'clock, and I don't intend to do that tonight. So we will get through what business we get through. Everything else will be carried forward to a future meeting of council.
I'll move the receipt of the report.
At this point, we have the pilot project update for Edgemont Boulevard and Highlands Boulevard. And I do believe there was a 30-second comment or something like that, Mr. Taha. A nice quick comment at the beginning.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This report provides an update on the traffic safety pilot project at the intersection of Edgemont Boulevard and Highland Boulevard. Historically, this intersection has experienced ongoing operational and safety concerns, including 29 reported collisions over a 5-year period, translating to roughly 1 collision every couple of months. This intersection continues to meet national warrant criteria for higher levels of traffic control, largely driven by high pedestrian volumes. Based on the Transportation Association of Canada, both an always stop and a traffic signal are warranted at this location. As a signal represents a higher level of control, staff's original recommendation was to proceed with signalization. In response to council direction in 2024 to explore alternatives to a traffic signal, staff implemented a one-year pilot in September 2025, consisting of an always stop and temporary curb extensions. Public feedback has highlighted concerns related to pedestrian vehicle conflicts and visibility impacts associated with the flex posts. However, early results do indicate that there has been a reduction in both vehicle speeds and potential collision severity. Based on these findings, staff are recommending that the always stop pilot project continue as planned through to at least September 2026 in order to further assess the traffic operations and give time for travel patterns to stabilize. In the shorter term, staff also propose reducing the number of flex posts in response to public feedback. Staff will report back to council upon completion of the pilot project to discuss next steps and identify long-term solutions. Thank you for listening, and we are happy to take any questions.
Okay, receipt's been moved by Councillor Murray.
Yeah.
Councillor Hanson, you're next. Will you second receipt? Or is that from before? Councillor Pope, second receipt?
Some questions.
Yeah, you can still ask questions, but yeah. Okay, Councillor Murray, your comments?
Thank you, and I'm happy to hear that we're removing the delineators. They're very distracting. There's so many of them. It was very distracting for the community. But I hope that we will consider raised tables in the area. I note that the staff report talks about the impact to transit, but I just cannot ever understand why the city of North Vancouver has raised tables throughout their transit corridor, and they've been in place for years. They run down 15th. 15th is a bus route, and there doesn't seem to be any problem with putting raised tables there. But in such a congested area such as Edgemont, we have this concern about raised speed tables to slow traffic down. And I know that there's issues of speeding in that area. So I don't know why the district continues to be so resistant when the city has been doing it for years and there's just no problems. So I would ask that be part of what forms the discussion when you come back in September.
Can we get a response from staff? Have you expressed concerns with speed tables on this?
I don't need response now, given the time. So I just like that to form part of the report because you
said you're coming back in September with more updates, and then we can talk about next steps. But you know, it's such a short block. There's not a lot of options, and it's been such a huge amount of testing and implementation that I think could be spent in other areas. And I think the community knows what they need. They didn't need a full light. They needed some abilities to slow people down, and the stop signs did that. But I think we need, one more ability to slow people down. And I think the raised tables would be a welcome addition.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Pope?
Yeah, I'm also happy to hear that some of the delineators are being removed, about half of them. I think that'll improve the visual situation. But I'm not sure that it's going to be the solution we need for the general confusion that goes on there every day and the problems that are still sort of it still seem to be very prevalent despite many months going by now with this in place. I do note that in April of 2024, when the directions were originally given to staff, that that I had also got added into the direction that staff use the DNV's 2014 Edgemont plan and design guidelines when implementing solutions to increase safety, while also making Edgemont Village more welcoming, pedestrian friendly, and beautiful. And I'm not seeing any of that. What happened to that?
Mr. Taha?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Pope, thank you for your question. I'm quoting the 2014 Edgemont Village Center when it says addressing operational efficiency and safety with traffic control changes, i.e. traffic signal or four-way stop. So the 2014 guidelines explicitly called for those two options to be considered. And so we felt by recommending an all-way stop as an incremental safety improvement, that met the intent of the guidelines.
But there was so much more to that report, which is what I detailed during that meeting many months ago, that would have really, including the raised sidewalks or the raised crossings and adding paint and other options that are just kind of very well known in the field for enhancing pedestrian safety while also improving the overall looks of things. And instead we ended up with this, really confusing situation where nobody's happy.
Yeah, through the mayor, there's in traffic engineering, there's two terms: perceived safety and actual safety. Perceived safety might be that there's a lot of confusion and I have to stop and I'm confused because everybody's moving, and then you've slowed down, you've stopped. So you're actually safer. The actual safety is higher, but the perceived safety is low. And so what traffic engineers typically have to balance is, the perceived safety and public concerns about safety versus the actual safety, where we found that 29 collisions happened in a 5-year period. The always stop forces drivers to stop. And so from an actual safety perspective, I would feel comfortable saying that it is safer, but there's a perceived safety concern because there's a high volume of pedestrians, and the high volume of pedestrians are what are triggering the confusion between this conflict between drivers and pedestrians, which is partly why we felt a higher order of traffic control may even be warranted. But in the absence of a traffic signal, an always stop is the next level that would help mitigate the conflicts between pedestrians and drivers.
Right.
Pedestrian crossing lights.
Yeah.
Mr.
Right.
Cohen.
Yeah, just to build off from Ehab's comments as well, staff recognize there's a lot of feedback that's come from the community, from members of council, for wanting to see something at this intersection. I think that's a reflection on what technical staff are identifying. There is this pedestrian vehicle conflict and trying to work through that. So one of the pieces that we're kind of stuck with is that options require capital, and it's currently not in the capital plan. And so as we report back at the end of the pilot, and council, certainly we've heard it so far, I wanted to talk about some options. We're going to need to also come with a capital request as it relates to that as well. So that's just another piece of the puzzle as well, is that a four-way stop, very cheap, just some signs, some delineators. That's something we can accommodate in the operating budget that exists, but for enhanced treatments and likes as well, it's capital, and that's going to be something that's going to have to come into the plan when we continue this discussion at the end of the pilot.
Okay. You can't afford a pedestrian crossing signal?
Counselor,
like, honestly,
got to do it in order.
I know, but it's
actually that is my question, because we have heard from a lot of people who have suggested the flashing lights for the pedestrian crossings. So if the problem is that we're trying to fix is strictly pedestrian safety, then why aren't we focusing on that with the pedestrian crossing signals, where people can push buttons to cross and control the volumes that way?
Mr. Cohen.
I think through the mayor, I think these are all great questions, but I think this is probably more appropriate for staff to go away and come back with options and present potentially in a workshop environment in terms of optioneering, as opposed to solutioning on the floor of council. It's typically what we're doing in transportation. I do want to recognize this is a challenging intersection. We as staff have found it challenging also from the intersection geometry. And as part of the report out process, we'll certainly be continuing this discussion. It's quite clear.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Ma.
Thank you. I think all of us have received feedback, so we'll just keep passing it on. That would be great. This is a question. Do you have any preliminary thoughts on what impact this has had on the traffic on Woodbine, especially at Woodbine and Highland?
Through the mayor, we could follow up on that information. I believe we did do some analysis. It's not currently in the report, but from previous reports, I believe we looked at some of the additional traffic dispersion as part of the 30K pilot and as part of the all-way stop. So we could follow up with that subsequent to this meeting.
Yeah. I'm just looking, I know the street is quite different in terms of the makeup, but there are retail growing on Woodbine for the key sections. So I just don't want to push one problem into another area. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Back.
Yeah, thank you. Just a short comment. I am in agreement with the comments that I've heard so far. I think it's positive that it's slowed vehicle speeds. That was the intention of the four-way stop. But I don't think it's made the pedestrian experience any more positive. And so I do look forward to staff coming back with some different options. I like the idea of a raised intersection or a speed table. I think that's something that we should be exploring. I can appreciate the challenge of this intersection, but it's also right at the heart of a village center. And I think it's important that we get it right in a way that does prioritize pedestrians at such a busy, active area in the village. So again, positive that we've seen vehicle speeds reduced, but I think we need to go further in making it just a nicer experience for people who are walking and rolling through the area. But positives that you're removing some of the delineators. I think they are kind of confusing for people the way they are set up right now as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want a clarification on page 326. It talks about with final implementation targeted for completion by December 31st, 27, which I think is a long ways out, in alignment with available TransLink funding timelines. So you mentioned you'd have to come to council for capital, but what does this refer to?
Through the mayor. So we do have TransLink funding, I believe around $140,000. That is due to the end of 2027. And so if we wanted that funding to be included, then we would need to, whatever implementation we do would need to be complete by then. However, depending on the ultimate solution, if it's beyond the $140,000 external funding, the district would have to cover the difference. And so without knowing exactly what the solution is at the moment, I can tell, without knowing what the solution is, it's hard to predict or to give certainty on what funding we'd need.
I totally understand what you're saying, but the way you put it out there, it was if you didn't even mention this funding from TransLink, that you'd have to come to council for everything. So, but I totally understand and you've clarified it. Thank you very much.
It was a part of some of the earlier discussions as well, but that's fair. Just my own comments on the matter. I'm in the village fairly frequently, and I will say there is a slight improvement in the pedestrian experience because I find it's easier to catch the attention of a driver when they've come to a stop than what it was before, where they're looking all over the place and you're trying to get their attention. And I found that when I walk up to the intersection quite often, because they stop, they do actually look for things. Yes, I'm not the most stealthy of characters. I usually get seen, but it's I think the big I think staff are skirting around the key issue, which is the culture change, which is that central area of Edgemont Village, across the street, across Edgemont, has had pedestrian on demand forever. And we kept the primary pedestrian controls and car controls to the outer area and kind of left that central intersection alone. And I think if you had to queue up to walk across the street in Edgemont, we might see a popular revolt, because I think they're used to being able to just walk up and go. It's a stop and look, but it's pretty continuous. And I think the volumes may get to the point where that's not a viable, safe option at some point. I guess as sort of a broader discussion, I'm wondering what insights we have into maybe diverting or supporting more traffic going other routes. I also get the impression that there's an awful lot of through traffic that goes through the village that is not bound for the village. And they don't find Woodbine to be an appropriate option. And obviously at the top end of Woodbine, there are some challenges there. And I don't want Colwood to be where they go because there's an elementary school on Colwood. But you know, are we accommodating too much traffic coming down Highlands to cut through the village, too much traffic coming across from Capilano Road rather than going up or down Cap Road? They're cutting through the village. I think I'd like to have some analysis on you know, maybe some strategies to divert some of the traffic off of there, and maybe that can solve some of the issues. I've got to imagine the locally originating or locally destined person is probably more aware of the pedestrians because they're stopping or going from that spot versus people who are rat running. And so maybe there are strategies we can take to manage the rat running without making it worse over on Colwood or somewhere else. But yeah, Mr. Fox.
Yeah, thanks. I just, through the chair, want to add to that. I did have a conversation with Mr. Cohen there about looking at these options and looking at possibilities of even the traffic management and the flow through possible park areas. If we look back at the Edgemont plan there was a discussion around a little park area, possibly closing some of the through traffic and looking at options. So again, there's been preliminary discussions between me and engineering. I know that I had a good walkabout with some of the community members there several weeks back, and that came up in that conversation as well. So again, but we need a lot more information before making any recommendations to council on that type of traffic solution, but we are discussing it.
Yeah, you won't often hear me say that we need to go on a bit of a road diet in a space, but Highlands is a 4-lane road through that section. I don't understand it. The volumes don't warrant it. It just causes people to go faster than they probably should. I mean, if you could implement bike lanes somewhere with the least amount of impact in the community, I've got to imagine that section of Highlands would probably be the easiest way to go, because I don't know that it needs to be so wide. I mean, it's narrowed at the top and it's narrowed once it's in the village. It's just approaching the village, it's wide open. So
wait, are you advocating for a bike lane? Did I just hear that?
I heard that, and I predicated it by saying you won't often hear me say that we need to reduce the road in an area. This is one that it doesn't fit. I don't know what the original designers and planners of the community thought would go further up Highlands that necessitated having such a broad road in that space. But at any rate, I'll probably be in trouble for that comment too. Call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Looking forward to your next update and the discussion along the way. All right, council. The next item is also traffic transportation, and this is the 2025 traffic volume update, Ironworkers Memorial Bridge and regional crossings.
Move receipt.
And receipt is moved. Is there a seconder for receipt? Councillor Back. I'm just going to go to staff. Do you have additional comments on the report?
Mayor Little, just in the interest of time, I won't do a thorough introduction. I think the only thing that I'd like to add as part of the report that we were going to be sharing with the verbal update, just for council's awareness, staff as well as council, we've made repeated efforts over several years to engage with the province on Highway 1 as it relates to capacity, safety, and long-range planning. So this has included requests for things like additional lane capacity down the cut, and asked for stronger coordination of transportation planning on the North Shore, an interest in understanding what transportation improvements the province is planning to accompany recent provincial housing legislation. And we've also shared the district-led study of concepts for multimodal bridge concepts across the Second Narrows for a replacement structure. So while the ministry made some initial commitments in 2023 for long-range planning for the Ironworkers Bridge, meaningful progress does not appear to have occurred. Concurrent to this, staff also continue to coordinate with the province on operational matters regarding the Highway 1 corridor, such as line marking, graffiti, and the on and off ramp considerations as well. I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Meary's mover, you have additional comments on the matter?
Well, I would just be interested in looking at the data further back on, the growth of traffic. I think we predicate a lot of our decisions in regards to town center development that, the town center development is going to accommodate the services needed for those people living in the community, and that people are going to look at alternative forms of transportation. I think from 2010, when the OCP had been approved, that has not occurred. We don't have we're void of the funds needed to expand the bus system. We're constantly competing with other municipalities for funds. We've got geographical challenges, and I think we have to understand the whole picture. The data starting in 2019, to me, when we got into 2020, no one was doing anything. I mean, there was so little combustion from cars and vehicles that you could see and the pollution, you could see the Himalayas. That skews the data. So I would be really interested to see the growth of the transportation system and the users. We know the mode change is not really the mode change in regards to transportation has changed, but not from the perspective of alternative forms. We see a growing number of cars coming because the value of property is high and people want convenience. I think all of this is, important. I don't know what, I guess you could write a letter and maybe use some of your colorful language about this one too. I don't know what it's going to do. Obviously, the Second Narrows is not a priority. I think we also need to understand, the future of the ferry terminal in Horseshoe Bay. There's pros and cons to whatever happens there, what the Sea to Sky is doing. This is, local traffic, industrial traffic, it's through traffic, it's all sorts of things. And we take this approach that if we do one thing, everything else will follow, and it just has not occurred. I think we need to understand a lot more to be able to share with our residents going forward, and to be able to put some very significant positions and forward to the provincial government, because clearly they don't understand who we are and the impacts that we're facing, especially with that growth to the island, to the Sunshine Coast, and up the Sea Sky corridor. Hence the next item on the agenda if we ever get to it.
Thank you. Councillor Back, do you have additional comments?
Not a lot to add. I just think this report largely confirms what all of us on the North Shore are already experiencing every day. As those of us around this table, we're talking to people every day about traffic congestion, and remains the top issue that impacts people from and within the district. I think for me, this report just reinforces that we need to be acting as a unified voice about the advocating for a new crossing. The bridge itself is aging. We're seeing more frequent maintenance related issues, potholes, etc., that are causing issues. And I think that's where we need to be advocating, as I say, across the North Shore for this bridge to be replaced. And it doesn't look like we've come nearly far enough, given where we are today. in looking at a future crossing, obviously we need to be thinking about what one that can accommodate frequent transit, and whether that's dedicated bus lanes or whatever the technology may be, so that we're building for the future. But we're not even at that stage. So I do feel like this needs to be the issue that we are united on in advocating to the province. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beck. Councillor Pope.
Thank you very much for this report. It's absolutely vital information, and I think a really important tool for us to use when we're talking to the provincial government about improving solutions along that corridor for all of us. And so I do support option 1 and option 2, that we write a letter and that we get out public facing messaging and communications about this, because I think very often people misunderstand that the congestion on getting on and off the bridge is what is causing congestion backing up into so many of our arterial routes that were never designed to handle it, and causing massive frustration for people who live here. And it's really all about the traffic getting to and from that bridge. So this is important data to have. But I do think we can also go a lot further. I would very much like to see a report outlining the pros and cons of congestion pricing. And I know this is very controversial, but it definitely has some pros to it, and maybe it's time we started thinking about it, so that people could have discounts for certain times to travel, but pay a little bit extra if they want to travel during peak times, or at least the companies could. So I realize that opens up a whole can of worms, but I think it's worth having more knowledge about, because we may be able to do something with that sooner than waiting for a new bridge or a new SkyTrain. And I also think along that same vein, we should be looking at what's going on with the Horseshoe Bay ferries, and that any increases out there, we should be having a conversation. We should be at the table about it, because that also hugely impacts our traffic, particularly at certain times of the day. There you got ferries coming in on unloading, 400, 1,000 cars. And that's at one of the worst times of the day when you're trying to get around 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Doesn't make sense to me. Could they be delayed? Could they be moved to Tawasin? Some of those big ferries coming in at that time. So I just think those are a few other things that we need to start just talking about, and not just solely relying on the province to hurry up and come up with a new bridge, because I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Pope. Councillor Forbes.
Yeah, I know it's getting late. I just had a couple of quick things. One thing in particular I want to point out. When you look at the table 2 and you look at the annual average daily traffic, we're the second highest out of all of these. But the important number that we should be looking at is the per lane number, and we're the highest, 21,800. That's the number that's most important. It's the amount of lane traffic going over there. And the other thing I think is, in the table 1, there's no consideration given. We're the second highest, like we said, but we only have 6 lanes and Port Mann has 10, and there's no consideration for the age. Port Mann's newer than the second Narrows Bridge. So when do they take into consideration the age of the bridge and the holes where you can see the ocean below and the lanes of traffic. We only have 6 lanes and 2 of them get blocked to do repair work and sometimes overnight. So I just think it's interesting when you look at it, and I do think that per lane number is the most important one. We're the highest.
Thank you, Councillor. Just my own comments on the matter. I do talk about this issue a fair amount, so I'm not going to get too much into the depth of it. But we do see this is an average number that you're presenting here. Our weekend summertime peaks are over 160,000 daily trips on this space, and it's lined up all day. It's not just the morning rush and the afternoon rush. Our weekend numbers, we hit a critical failure point for hours and hours and hours of every day. I have had to change lots of different plans about whether I'm going to travel around the community, particularly on a weekend day. And, you know, you're going to go over to Burnaby to pick up something at Garden Works or something and come across. No way, you know, you're going to get trapped on the other side of the bridge. But I guess we've been saying this a lot for a long time. What's going to be different enough to get the attention of the provincial government? We haven't had a lane increase to the North Shore since 1968. Our population's more than doubled. The province hasn't made a commitment to replace the bridge, but puts immense pressure on us to keep growing as a community. And, you know, when you go to down where the RCMSAR dock is underneath the Ironworkers Memorial Bridge, there's a gravel parking lot there. And when you walk through, you can literally find chunks of the bridge where the bridge deck has broken away and fallen through, and it's now amongst the gravel down below it. And like, even if the provincial government believes that you've got 40 years of life left in this bridge span, we're still due for a redecking project. And so we don't have a plan for either at this point. And I'm absolutely frustrated. We got underfunded by the province for our TransLink commitments. We got unfunded by the feds for the TransLink changes. Without transit as a reliable alternative, we're just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse in this corridor. And I'm very frustrated with the situation. But I will say that you know, the money goes to where the population goes to some degree. And so out in New Westminster, where everybody from Surrey was crossing over on the Patella Bridge before the Stallawasam Bridge was created, the lineups there onto Royal Avenue were about 5 kilometers long. Our daily lineups are 12 to 13 kilometers long. And we're not getting the same attention that they got with 5 kilometer long lineups and backups onto Royal Avenue. And so, I don't know, let's just keep scheduling provincial ministers to come and meet with us on Friday afternoons in the District of North Vancouver, and maybe we'll get some attention from them. But I know the dire financial situation we're in right now. It's going to be very hard to get constructive work move forward on this. But it is probably the most impactful thing affecting residents on the North Shore right now is your ability to get around and to and from your neighborhood. And I'm very frustrated by the situation. Councillor Pope, second time.
Thank you. I just had one more question that I didn't ask, and that is the why. Why is it that the traffic has increased so much on that bridge? Because the report says that other major regional crossings have experienced stable or declining volume since 2019, but ours is hugely increased. Why is that? Do we know why?
It's through the mayor. It's quite difficult for us to really pinpoint what the rationale is for it. For staff, what was a really interesting piece for it was the 2025 data was really the first year post-pandemic where it stabilized. And so it really understood work from home environments, people's changing patterns as well. And so we were curious to also see what did that do with the Ironworkers, and the fact that it has increased means that we don't exactly know why per se, but it's probably to do with potentially local, regional and interregional pressures.
And
kind of answers everything.
Yes.
this,
Yeah.
the census that comes out next year will probably also show the number of jobs in the North Shore has gone up quite significantly. C-SPAN, Fiberco, all of the waterfront industrial areas. Lynn term is at its historical highs as well. We're at that time, ladies and gentlemen, so I'm going to call a question on the matter. All in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. Councillor Muir, your report is the last item, but I have an offer for you. Anything that we don't finish now starts at the beginning of the next meeting, which will happen to be immediately after we've had a presentation on rail. Okay, so I'm okay with that. So at this point, I think we'll table that item, and I will accept adjournment, recognizing we've tabled the last item and the previous letter. That's fine. Okay, accepted. Thank you very much to staff for your preparation for the reports, for our consideration this evening. Thank you to the members of the public for participating, and council, thank you for the important decisions you made this evening. Everybody have a fantastic week. Good night.